Back on Cybertron, the Autobots have created 3 new warriors. Cup, experienced in battle. Blur, he's fast. Hot Rod, he really lives up to his name. Transformers, robots in disguise. The Decepticons' days are numbered. Robots in disguise from Hasbro.
Welcome to the 22nd episode of the Triple Takeover Toycast, a fortnightly podcast about Transformers toys, self-enablement, and 3 grown men mercilessly looking for any excuse to rip the piss out of each other. My name is Sixo, but more on that later, as I'm joined as ever by a couple of vintage specimens as my co-hosts. First, you have a man known for being the scourge of the pre-Transformers collecting scene, a reputation that can be a rod for his own back at times, so do forgive him if he gets a bit arsey. It's M.A.S. from Transformers Square One. Then we have a man who will happily raise a cup of rum to celebrate an exciting toy purchase, although it might be a bit of a blur in the morning before he gets a Springer back in his step. It's Liam from Toybox Soapbox.
You know me so well.
Yeah. Together we are Triple Takeover, and today we're here to talk about the classic 1986 movie toys, which arrived in a wave of new product introduced in the hallowed big-screen Transformers film as the corpses of your previous childhood heroes were somewhat aggressively shunted out the back door. What a time it was. Anyway, before all of that, how's it going, chaps?
Wheelie good. Well done.
There we go.
You've been holding that one, haven't you?
Yeah, indeed.
And that's the best I came up with. Yeah, great.
That was excellent, mate. Well done. Good effort. So, how's it all hanging?
Good, man. Really good. Very excited. Excited for this new year?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, Happy New Year, everyone.
Wow. 2022.
Yeah, we're fooling everyone.
The bunting's still falling around us as we speak.
It's not, yes, it's fair to say it's not quite New Year as we're recording this, is it? But
it's not even Christmas.
No, we can pretend.
Don't spoil the illusion. Don't ruin it. It's the Triple Takeover universe.
Still the summer. Sometime in June.
Yeah. Imagine that if it was June and we were recording this 6 months in advance. Well, we could just pretend like we're coming from the past or something, or maybe we're in the future looking back at, I don't know, whatever, man.
I think we spend enough time in the past.
That's true, yeah. Which is kind of relevant for today, because we're going to talk about toys that are, what is it now, 35 years? It's 35 years, isn't it?
Oh gosh, it is this year, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. Hashtag TFTM35 this year, that's right.
Well, that's just frightening and quite, no, not good. Don't like it. Hashtag dislike.
We date ourselves quite a lot on this, don't we? We do it to ourselves. We punish ourselves with the journey of time.
I know. I think for me now, it's the realization that, like, on social media and that, it's all the people that you see that are like, oh yeah, no, I love that old Transformers movie. I remember seeing it for the first time when I watched it on DVD or something like that. And you're like,
with my granddad.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, oh no, what's going on?
Yeah, I saw someone say they discovered G1 through their dad's DVDs. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Wasn't that like last year they came out?
The number of people now that message me or just include me in something and they say, oh yeah, I want to pick up that old Hot Rod toy for my dad because he had it when he was a kid. And I'm like, oh my God. And these are like adults saying this. Do you know? It's just terrifying.
That's it. It's people you share a pint with at the bar at like TF Nation as well. And you suddenly realise the age gap difference is quite terrifying. Like where they came in, it's all like step by step in Transformers. You're like, oh, you came in and this Transformers which I was watching in a pub. Yeah, like that.
It definitely. It's good though as well, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's great to think that it's continuing. And I don't know, I'm always encouraged by the fact that actually of all the kind of touch points in G1 or whatever part of Transformers, that the 86 movie seems to be one that most people seem to still like, even younger fans. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, but do you remember that video on YouTube, kids react to the Transformers?
Vaguely.
It was just they got like a bunch of preschool children to watch vintage Transformers cartoons and then filmed their reactions. Yeah, that's basically the crowd at TF Nation now that he was just talking about sharing a pint with.
Right.
Those people are grown up and pointing fun at,
There is like an amazing contradiction with this, isn't there? Like all of this stuff we look back to for our childhood, but at the same time, it makes us feel really old in some moments like this. It's this weird contradiction of it.
Yeah, it is a funny old thing. I don't know. It's only going to get worse as well. Like I was thinking recently, I think, Maz, you said something about, am I still going to be doing this when I'm an old man? And I was like, oh man, because it's 35 years now, since 1986. I mean, what's that going to be like when it's 40 years or 50 years, for example? That's just, you imagine it when we're all sat around celebrating
being
the
60 and
the 50th anniversary.
This.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling.
We've got enough ideas to carry us that long. Don't worry.
We're still doing this podcast when we're 60. Just imagine what that's going to be like.
Beamed into your brain.
There'll be kids out there saying, "Oh yeah, I remember watching this old film of my granddad's collection. You know, whatever the electronic media is at the time. Do you know what I mean?"
I remember G1 triple takeover.
yeah. Maybe there'll be a new triple takeover crew they've taken over from us. Right, well, it's also worth mentioning that, as ever, we are sponsored by our wonderful sponsor. It's TFSource.com. You should check out for all your Transformers and third-party needs. We'll do a little segment on them in the middle of the podcast, as we always do. Take a look at what they've got in stock. But thank you very much to them for continuing to sponsor us. Also worth mentioning our Patreon, which is patreon.com/triple takeover. And we have 4 glorious tiers. What can you get on there, Maz?
Oh, well, you're listening to it now. You've got 2 fantastic holiday season minisodes to catch up on. One is our favourite Deaths of Optimus Prime, and then there's the Christmas minisode. And if you think that little snippet of Sixo singing 4 glorious tears was good, you need to listen to the Christmas minisode. It is top draw.
The full
takeover,
version.
trust me. So yeah, there's the exclusive minisodes, which are a massive draw, and we've just published a massive list of, I think, over 100 topics that we've given our butlers, Sixo's butlers, the choice of picking from. And also, we will still take suggestions if they're great. And also, you will get to listen to episodes early. You'll occasionally be able to vote on episode topics.
And there's the deleted scenes as well, which
outtakes.
Some of the outtakes are quite good fun, actually, just if they don't fit into the kind of main episode. We do trim stuff out sometimes, if one of us is having a moment or whatever, and that all makes it up onto Patreon. So, yeah, it's good. There's also our Redbubble as well, worth mentioning, because you can get some official Triple Takeover merch, and that is redbubble.com/people/triple takeover/explore. There's all kinds of stuff on there. You can get
/leggings.
Just
go straight to the good stuff. Just don't waste time on it.
Stationery. Everyone wants stationery.
Yeah, that may or may not be an official part of the URL there, but you can get some lovely designs. Some people posting more pictures of mugs and things up on there recently, wasn't there?
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, that was really nice. We had a bit of a request for another mug as well to complete the set. Right, well, let's get on to the topic at hand, which is 1986 movie toys. And I guess to kick us off, it's worth being maybe a little bit specific about what it is or kind of is not that we're talking about tonight, because obviously the name of the episode hopefully gives away what is the focus. But we obviously, as many people know, we have already done an episode on 1984 and 1985, but both of those episodes proved to be like a little bit not unwieldy. I'd say they're both really good, but we have sort of already listened back to them. We said that we would want to come back and do kind of more focused bits at some point, whether that's minisodes or whatever, on some of the subgroups and things in those years. Maybe we can talk a bit more about Maz's opinion on Dinobots, for example. What's not been said. But with 1986, particularly as it is such a large year, it's actually got the largest product lineup of any G1 year, I think, from memory. Certainly a lot larger than 84, 85. I mean, way larger than 84, let's put it that way. Yeah, it's massive, absolutely massive. And then you do have kind of 2 camps of toys. You've got the stuff that we're talking about today, which is all new characters from the 86 movie, of course. And then you have stuff that actually was kind of hand-me-downs from the kind of microchange Diaclone era. A couple of new molds in there as well. Wasn't all exclusively from, inherited from pre-Transformers, but a lot of it was. So we're going to separate those out. So if it's a character that appeared first in the movie, that's on the agenda for today. And if it wasn't, it's not. Simple as. Is that fair to say, chaps?
Yeah, I think the way I saw it was just that if a 1986 G1 toy has representation in the movie and wasn't released in 85 or 84, but 86, then we're talking about it today. And your broadsides and your octanes will have to wait till another time.
Yeah, we could do a whole episode on Sandstorm, of course, because he's one of the best G1 toys of all.
Before we start, can I ask you guys a question? Did either of you own any of the movie toys before you saw the movie?
What a great question.
Maz will just check his spreadsheet now, just to make sure.
I really don't think I did, because 1986 was when I started getting toys. And that, first of all, I went through the whole G1 cars and Decepticon strike planes. And that, I think, took me well into the end of 1986 and possibly 1987. I got Rodimus Prime for my 7th birthday in 1987. So I don't think I did have any movie toys before seeing the movie. I really don't think so.
Because these days, we're so influenced, aren't we? With preconceptions for things we'd already seen. But then it was a very different time. But I remember for me, I had Hot Rod at this point. So I went into the film not knowing anything about him, because I did read the comic from time to time, but not, I was only about 4 or 5, but I very vividly remember getting Hot Rod and then going into the film, because it was around, I went to see it. I think it was either on my birthday, it was the day after. So definitely had the toy. And I remember being trying to work out the context of what that would be like, if that makes sense. From the mind of a 4 or 5 year old.
I think I might have got Wreck-Gar before I saw the movie then, because I remember getting Wreck-Gar from my brother as a birthday present, just wondering, who's that then?
Yeah.
Maybe the name threw me, because he's never referred to as Wreck-Gar in the movie.
He's not, is he? He's not.
No.
Yeah.
I have this very distinct memory of seeing Cup and a few of them on the shelves and being really confused, because it looked so different, because they were all suddenly Sci-Fi. Because at that point we'd had the jump starts, but I don't think I'd ever seen those at the time. But I very remember that change, and I remember it's the first time my head went, something's different here, and I wasn't sure how much I liked it or whether I was on board.
I can only imagine that having, because you had stuff like Starscream and things like that, and some of the car bots. I can only imagine what getting Wreck-Gar must have been like as a first impression. That's
weird.
Quite a shift.
It's so different to everything in G1 at the time, isn't it? With its ball joints, and it's very different. It's still different today. And man, we've talked about how much more we appreciate that toy today than back then. A mint Wreck-Gar is a thing of absolute beauty.
I only bought it as a result of this podcast. It's the first time I've ever owned it or experienced it was through us doing this podcast.
It's magnificent, isn't it? It's like a door to a part of G1 that you simply haven't accessed. And it's like, wow, that is like a mystery, or this whole bonus. It's like a bonus album or something like that. A bonus track you've never heard from your favorite artist.
It's like a free return ticket to your childhood for a minute, because you remember how you liked Transformers at the time and get to experience something from that time. Now as an adult, you do look at it with different eyes, but you still, there's this moment where your brain just sort of resets for a moment, and there's this childlike wonder to it. And it's wow.
That, not to go into the next topic down the line, but that is exactly why I haven't opened my G1 Octane yet. There has to be a right moment to do that, so I can experience this 1986 toy that I've never handled before.
Oh wow, you've never had it? Okay.
No, I've got a lovely one, and I'm just waiting for the right moment.
It's a good one. I had Octane as a kid, and again, not to kind of get into it on Octane, but it's a really nice
feeling,
one. Yeah, it's a really nice one for sure. Yeah, Wreck-Gar I had as a kid as well, and actually, no, I say that I didn't. I had it. There was a point post childhood where I got a load of secondhand Transformers, and I say post childhood. It wasn't so much post. I think it was after all of my Transformers had been sold by my mum. Apparently, with my sign off. I'm not sure. The opinions on that vary slightly, I think. But then we got a load of secondhand ones, and Wreck-Gar was in that. So I say it wasn't. It was sort of post-childhood, but not really. And he was in there, but he was pretty beaten up, and had that copy for years. And never really, I know we talked about this before, but I never really thought much of it, just because it was kind of, I don't know, it just always looked a bit kind of brown and worn and just not really all that fun.
Yeah, and it does wear badly.
It wears badly.
Because of the looseness. And, I posted photos of my brand new Wreck-Gar not so long ago, and most of the reaction was supremely positive because it's so stunning. Gold chrome stickers are quite rare in Transformers, and he's a really good looking toy. He's got a really nice head sculpt. Doesn't look so much like the cartoon, but he's just really distinct and beautiful. But there was one person who retweeted that picture and said, with a bunch of expletives, how much they hated that toy and how much they hated it as a kid, and they were just going on this rant. And it's exactly the kind of toy I can see, if they had a loose one, why it would frustrate them. I remember being frustrated with Wreck-Gar as a kid because it was so tight to get the chest to open up and to get the red top part with the little pointy laser boobs to fit nice and flush on top of it. I remember being frustrated by the rear wheel, trying to get it between the legs to transform and so on. So I do recall that frustration, but it's obviously
it's
totally
an awkward
different.
It's an awkward toy. I mean, it's not, when it's really nice and the joints are tight and all of that, it's fine. But still, then it's not the smoothest transformation, probably fair to say, with having to swap the wheel out, so an element of parts forming in it. So I can see why it's not for everyone.
But it's distinct, and it's the kind of distinct that you now can fully appreciate as an adult collector and say, that's a gem, and that's a really special toy.
We were kind of saying this on the minisode that we were recording recently, weren't we, actually? I think we sort of made the point that a lot of toys now feel like that, in that at the time they maybe were a bit unappreciated, but we were talking, I think, in reference to classics and things like the Nerf Megatron. And we were saying that it's one of those that at the time you look at it and you're like, what on earth? But actually now you can go back however many years and sort of appreciate it for what it was at that time. And it almost takes on new life in a funny way. And I don't know, for me, I remember getting that Wreck-Gar that I've now got at TFN and just being blown away by how lovely it was. Just absolutely blown away.
I remember you being stood next to you as you were buying that, and you just went into this like trance.
I think I remember you talking to me, and I was kind of like,
I left you. I literally left you because you just went quiet as I was talking, and I was like, he's not listening.
I was rooting. I was in haggle mode or whatever. But I got quite a good deal on it as well.
Can't you see a situation where that toy is designed by an adult engineer or designer, and then they look at the final thing and they appreciate and think, this is amazing. You know, we've done a great thing here. It's beautifully sculpted. It looks so different to the rest. And even though it doesn't look like the cartoon model too much, like you say, a mint Wreck-Gar with those proportions and that kind of posability of the arms, the chrome and just the shape of the head with the fairing of the motorcycle, and the way that he can then hold his one of his wheels as a shield, and he's got the axe and the gun. And those gorgeous stickers. I can't say enough about how gorgeous those stickers are. And you'd sit there and appreciate, like, this is a wonderful thing we've created. Kids are going to love this. But compared to something like a Hot Rod, it's just not as immediately accessible to children to enjoy in that way. And I think all the positive comments I got for those photos were with the lens of an adult collector, but then one person really remembered vividly how much they hated it as a child and expressed their lack of appreciation for it because of that.
I could see that. I mean, I guess as a designer as well, you don't know how these things are going to wear, do you? You don't know that. I guess you might have an inkling of how joints are going to loosen off a bit over time, but you've got no idea how these things are going to look when they've been at the bottom of a plastic tub or whatever for several years. But yeah, I can also see that. I think definitely our childhood experiences with some of this stuff cloud it hugely. Although I do think it's an easy toy to kind of reappreciate and everything. But now. I guess I can also understand that it probably wasn't, compared to some of the other products that were out that year, top of anybody's Christmas list, I would guess.
No, that's right. And of course, it's the first year of non-microchange, Takatoku, Diaclone Transformers. It's one of the new generation of Transformers. So not surprised they were trying to find their aesthetic and find their feet with design principles that took something from before, but also tried to do something new for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's a real watershed year, actually. I mean, that's kind of obvious in a lot of respects, with the kind of new wave of product. But yes, I guess maybe that's a good place to kind of really get into the meat of this tonight and sort of acknowledge, isn't it? Because this is of course the first year with actual Transformers toys designed for Transformers. With 1984 and 85 having been made exclusively of toys that were inherited from other toy lines, as we've talked about in previous episodes. So that's a real thing in itself. But I think, as you were just saying, Maz, the aesthetic and the design sensibilities and all of that haven't necessarily been settled on by this point. So there's still toys being imported from elsewhere. You've still got designs, even some that hadn't been used elsewhere, that are being kind of ported into the line. But then the toys, I'm also thinking of stuff that we're not talking about tonight, like the Aerial Bots and those guys and Metroplex, which were Diaclone designs, prior, but then kind of worked on and everything and kind of evolved for Transformers. But then you've got toys like, the obvious ones, Blur, Hot Rod, Cup, that were completely new. But I think they are, and Wreck-Gar is probably a good example of that, all still very different from 87 and what came afterwards. So it's a real unique year in a lot of regards.
Mm-hmm. They were trying a lot of new things, weren't they? You can see that it's very experimental. You can see in those toys how, they become not more refined as such, but there's a definite change to a sort of theme. When you look at them, they feel more like Transformers later than these do, I think.
A trajectory.
Yeah, there we go. That's a better word. But the way you look at those movie toys is they stand out because they're larger straight away than the cars you're used to, everything feels different. Even though they've still got diecast and stuff like that, they don't feel like what you know. So, and it's really strange because then when you go to the 87 toys, they're a lot more plastic and stuff, but they somehow feel more familiar with Transformers. But I think that's partly because probably by then the 86 toys had got you used to them being different from the Diaclone toys, if that makes sense.
Do you think the gap between 85 and 86 is as big or bigger than the gap between 86 and 87?
I think there's stuff in 86 that would sit perfectly with 87 stuff. And I'm not just saying that because we had movie Target Masters, but something like Sandstorm. I know it's not a movie toy. So let's go back. Let's say something like Cyclonus or Scourge, mostly plastic toys with, some die-cast in the joints and stuff. They sit fine with the proportions and the look of 87. And I maybe that's just rose-tinted glasses saying, well, obviously Cyclonus goes with 87 because of everything I've ever been told and seen. But something like Sideswipe next to Hot Rod is way different. And Hot Rod has rubber wheels. And it comes in the exact same proportion box as G1 cars do. But it's really different.
Yeah, but when you put the, say, Cyclonus next to any of the Headmasters, for example, they look different again. They feel like a really weird set of toys. It's almost like the two influences have combined. And it's
but Cyclonus next to Slug Slinger or Trigger Happy is not bizarre. And Scourge next to Misfire is not bizarre.
I still think there's a little bit of a difference. I think for me, it's the kind of blockiness of them, because 87 is a very blocky year. So stuff like, I was thinking stuff like Chrome Dome and Hardhead and those guys, but even Slug Slinger, Trigger Happy, whatever, they're all quite angular, blocky dudes. Whereas Cyclonus, especially Scourge, even Hot Rod to some extent, Cup definitely, they're all quite curvy, and they kind of follow the movie aesthetic in that regard. And I'm sure we'll talk in a minute about the kind of design and kind of gestation of these designs through to the toys. But I think they are unique in that regard. And they don't really fit in with 84 and 85, but they also don't necessarily concretely fit with 87 either.
But they're closer to 87 than 85, I think.
I could see that. Yeah, I could.
Again, it feels like almost like the 86 toys would come after the 87, because it's like the 87 from 85 is a massive jump. That one feels like a weird fusion of the two. Mm-hmm. Like it's almost like they've taken elements from the two, and it's just weird how they've then been pulled back apart, if you know what I mean. Because when you look at Cyclonus and Scourge, you can see that sort of like Sixo was saying there, the curves and stuff. There's this Diacloneness to them almost without them being Diaclone. You can still see sort of vestiges of that. There's a lot of hints of that and stuff.
I do wonder, like Hot Rod for me actually is an interesting one, because I can sort of see he's a real transition toy for me. I can see 85, 84, 85, and I can see 87 in it. And I kind of feel like if maybe the chest was die-cast, for example, which would be lovely. I mean, that would be really nice. But that would make it feel more like a kind of Diaclone era toy in some regards. But I think also the fact that they don't have the little cockpits and they're slightly bigger as well. I think if it was just maybe kind of 2/3 of the size that it is, or, even maybe just a touch more than that, I don't know, but roughly that sort of size, and it had a little cockpit and it had a Diaclone, it had a die-cast chest, I think it probably wouldn't feel such a step out of
and
where
such
it was.
Big heads compared to like Autobot cars.
That's true.
Or even Decepticon jets, their heads are very different size.
I think, is it that then? Do you think you can just see that they were designed as characters first and then turned into toys versus everything else which was designed as a toy and turned into a character? Is
that not the story though? Is that not how it actually went? That Floro Deri did the drawings for the concepts for the movie, and then the best they could produce as close to that design, somewhere between his original drawings, the movie representation, and then the toy is basically where we ended up. Very much so, yeah. So Floro Deri did all of the designs for the movie and, worked on them, but they were also evolving hugely over time as well. So my understanding anyway is that, the toys were in production and being worked on. And of course, the designs for the film were rapidly changing. I mean, clearly the aesthetic of the movie changed loads. And that's obvious in stuff like the fact that Unicron has 2 head sculpts in the film. There's numerous examples of that, of stuff that clearly should have been
a deleted scene in a kind of more established, final product, if you like, but it's still in there for all to see.
Magnus's colors is a great example as well.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that. Yeah, absolutely. The fact that you've got that little preview trailer kind of clip, and that clearly, they were working on it with Magnus in Diaclone colors. Kind of insane, really.
Pink Hot Rod.
Yeah, I know.
Still a fine example.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually don't know how they ended up with red Hot Rod, or whatever color you want to call it, the sort of final 1986 toy. But I do wonder how they got to the color of the toy, considering the color that he is in the film.
I would hate to think it was something along the lines of, well, that's too pink for what is classed on the box as an all-American hero boy, a toy aimed at boys in an era where you just have to watch the toys that made us and the people behind the toys in these major toy lines to see how very basic their motivations were for choosing characters and names and toys and gimmicks and stuff. So I wonder if that had something to do it. But if they did, it was out the window by the time Misfire rolled off the line, wasn't it?
I think it would be no great surprise because, look at it this way. Was it Iron Man 3? And we're talking, I can't remember how old that film is now, but that's last 10 years. And that film, they were due to have a female villain, and they dropped it because the at the time CEO or whatever of Marvel said that a female villain wouldn't sell toys. So we're talking in the last decade with that. Mm-hmm. So I can totally believe that in the 80s it would have been a conversation about having a pink lead male toy, and that wouldn't have been deemed not acceptable. I don't know that that's why they changed it, but it wouldn't surprise me.
We do still call them boys' toys and girls' toys, though, don't we? Even now, that slowly changes. So it's still, that idea of pink is definitely more seen as a girl's toy, isn't it? And I can imagine they would have thought that at the time when they were seeing it, when they redesigned it.
But it's funny because I thought that the design of those movie characters was a very specific color palette across the team. So you had Hot Rod's pink, RC is more pink, you've got Springer who's green, and then you've got Blur who's blue, and then Cup is kind of bluey green, Magnus is a more obvious blue. It just seemed like if you put them all together, they have this very gradiented change of color along the color wheel, and I thought that was somehow intended.
I've always seen it that way. Certainly when you line up all the toys, the real tell actually is, the kind of masterpiece or third-party toys that you can get of those characters now because they're so close to the film. Mm-hmm. And when you look at all the color palette, it is a total rainbow. It's gorgeous for photography and whatever. I love it.
And then you put really nice orange wheelie in there and it works completely because that's the missing color. It's orange for wheelie.
I always saw it that way, that they must have, I presume, chose the colors to just be as primary as possible, or as vivid as possible, I should say. No, they're not all primary colors, but they're just super, super vivid, I guess, and just would appeal to kids' imaginations. I had thought that Cup and all of that were just like another shade added into the mix, weren't they? And then you've got Perceptor, who's red as well, Blaster.
Yeah, and then you get to the Decepticons who move into the purple range.
Yes,
and Unicron is obviously yellow as well, so it's very teal.
Is he yellow? Is he yellow or orange? I don't know.
Yellow, orange, and whatever. Grey. Is it grey?
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? He's kind of blue and grey, but also yellow and orange. It's a really weird palette.
But then you've also got Kranix, who's sort of a darker pink. He's sort of moving off into that part of the spectrum. So it's almost like they ticked the boxes. Like, we need someone at every stage of the rainbow.
They're very
featured in the movie.
Well defined though. Like when you look, like the Quintessons are all very green and those sort of colors. But then, like you were saying about the Decepticons, it's like the new ones are all very purple or blue. Yeah. But
you got the Sharkticons, you got Nor, who's more into that kind of spectrum as well.
Yeah,
but that's a really unique 1986 thing as well, isn't it? Because after that, I guess there are more specific Decepticon colors. Autobots remain a bit kind of whatever, although very few of them are purple.
Yeah. Then you get the palette.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You get the kind of shell suit uniform, don't you?
Yes.
For all the latter day 1980s Decepticons through to the Euro stuff as well, as
which you referred to as my wedding photos yesterday. I didn't get a chance to reply to that. I was just trying to think of a comeback.
Sorry, I knew I was being cheeky posting that, but I was actually killing myself laughing as I was posting.
I think if that's how I looked on my wedding day, I would have been doing really well, to be perfectly honest.
Mate, I'm sure you looked even better.
It is reflective of the time, though, isn't it? Those colours, like we were saying, like when Maz mentioned that Misfire is pink, like later Transformers, we start seeing pink quite a lot, don't we? Like the hot pink on windscreens and all sorts of stuff because we move into that era.
Fangry.
Yeah, but even like on Autobots and stuff, but that was that time, wasn't it? If you remember, like the very late 80s, early 90s, you were getting all the global hypercolor stuff. Those kind of colors were coming into boys' toys, as it was, and all that sort of stuff a lot more, and it was way more prevalent. Bermuda shorts everywhere, all that sort of.
But this is the start of that, isn't it? In 1986, It is the start of something wonderful in that respect. And you just, I'm looking
explosion.
and this very distinct, differing palettes. Like I'm looking behind me, and the way I've actually sorted my collection, and this was the first shelf that I created in this collection, and it was done years ago, and I've maintained it. Is the movie Autobots and Headmasters and Target Master Autobots, and then in the other shelf prominently the Decepticon versions, and you can just see how primary the Autobot colors are. Like think of something like Sure Shot and Point Blank with the red, blue, yellow, orange, very clear, and then all the Decepticons like Decepticon clones and Abominus, and just you got the teals and you've got the pinks and the purples. Right, yeah, just this wonderful divide and immediate recognition of Decepticon Autobot, and this is where it starts with those colors that they gave the Cups and the Hot Rods and Cyclonus and so on.
Yeah, because if you look back though, like all the early 80s toys, it's Vietnam War inspired, isn't it? Everything's military and realistic looking, and same with the early years of Transformers. But once you get to that sort of 86 time, everything starts to change, because even like He-Man goes into space, everything becomes more, Transformers becomes way more sci-fi, and there's like this sudden change where you go from everything being war inspired and realistic to more imaginative and crazy. All the franchises started to go, like G.I. Joe's another one, wasn't it? That went that way, and everything started to become more. Space toys came back, didn't they? But everything was like that in the late 80s.
Yeah. Did that happen to DuckTales as well?
Yes, you've got the giant sci-fi robot episode of DuckTales.
You got Gizmo Duck, don't you?
Yeah. Gizmo Ducks are brilliant. We love him.
Well, we'll have to do a whole episode on Gizmo Duck at some point, no doubt. But I was going to say, what's weird, actually, I think you're right, Liam, and I was just imagining like a 1984 lineup with, like Hound and Mirage and all those guys, but with the color schemes of the 1986 toys. And if they'd have come out, I mean, I guess it's that's
called G2, isn't it?
I was just going to say exactly that, and that's actually where I got to in my brain, was that if anything, it's what happened, isn't it? Sort of, a decade later almost.
It does feel like that influence from like that. The war stuff, that time, it feels like that influence fades in the mid 80s, and then everything changes with it, as it does when you get into the 90s. Things change again. And
well, think about it. Think about the origin of those toys. They came from Diaclone and Microchange, which were extremely fixed on being real life items. I mean, that Diaclone line of toys, okay, we all know it as car robot, but also it's real and robo is the phrasing that they have on a lot of that packaging. And of course, Microchange was supposed to be everyday items in your house, like guns and cassette players and stuff. So once they started to move away from those designs and designed their own Transformers, they were no longer beholden to that sort of, this is the entire meaning of the line is real life items. I don't think the movie would have been as much of an adventure and Star Wars ripoff if it was just based in someone's front yard and what they had parked out on the street. I was going
to say that as well with the Star Wars thing. You imagine like the writers and the designers of this stuff as well. The ages are changing. It's the people coming into it would have been coming in from more of a Star Wars. That was their fandom, wasn't it? Whereas earlier they would have been from other things like Action Man or that sort of stuff.
It's amazing how quickly it all evolves and kind of influences shift and things like that. So. But yeah, I think you can totally see that these are the first toys that were designed, based on existing character models, and that there was an attempt anyway to kind of make them as maybe not as screen accurate, because I don't think it was important back then in the same regard. Would you agree? I don't think there was the same focus on hyper slavish screen accuracy that there is now.
I don't think we ever saw that then, did we? On anything?
That's what I mean. Yeah,
it was accepted that the TV things would look different to the toys.
I don't really recall any toy line. Maybe Turtles being...
No, Turtles is miles away from the cartoon.
Do you think? Is it?
Yeah, the toys, like, they are designed completely differently. They're all, like, quite monstrous, aren't they? They've got big veins and...
That's true, actually. That's true,
yeah. Specifically designed with, like, almost like a horror style element, because all the mutants look really, like, monstrous.
But wasn't the thing with He-Man that they were using existing molds that were crafted for other toy lines, and then they adapted those molds to create the first line of toys that were released, and then they weren't quite there? I might be thinking of G.I. Joe, actually. It's something I remember from the Toys That Made Us, but then they started sculpting them a little bit more
there's
bespoke.
There's certain toys in He-Man that are like that. Like Battle Cat is taken from some tiger toy from something else and scaled. I think it's scaled down.
That's what it was, yeah.
Yeah.
But the actual He-Man figures
they
are all
needed
new.
a toy, yeah.
Yeah,
and they found it. That was it.
Yeah, because they did that thing where they repurposed a lot of things. Like you saw Hasbro did it, or Kenner did it, didn't they? With the Ewok Village into Robin Hood and stuff like that. You would always see toys reappear. Like the Turtle line has stuff like that. But from He-Man, it was Battle Cat. And I assume Panther as well would have been off that same sort of thing. But everything else, I think all the main figures were brand new.
Yeah, I just thinking, I mean, of all the toy lines that are around, maybe the Ghostbusters toys might have been a little bit closer to the tune. But there was, just generally, it's a blanket statement, but I just don't feel like there was that same focus on making stuff look an exact replica of the screen, whatever the screen kind of interpretation was, or comics, or any of that. It just, I don't know, certainly for me as a kid, it was almost like, if stuff looks a bit like it does on the TV, great, but it was never something that I particularly fixated on. I don't know. Whereas now it's like a big deal. Big deal.
But in the same line of thinking, how much would that have been tested by releasing RC as a pink chrome dome? I think that would have been right on the borderline of people accepting that as an RC toy, because chrome dome is so different to what RC. It's almost like, they can't be compared, like a Headmaster chrome dome trying to be RC.
That would have been a really weird release in so many respects, because the other thing about that is that there were no repaints at that time.
Right.
Really.
Okay.
I mean, like, take Diaclone stuff out of it, because you've got, there are repaints in Diaclone. You've got your red alerts and your side swipes and Ironhides and Ratchets and all of that. But past that era, past everything, take all the Diaclone toys out, there are no real repaints, really.
Just like
one or
eject
two.
and rewind.
Yeah, which is, the one I was going to say. But other than that, 87... are there any repaints? And I mean, there are stuff that gets repeated in the Japanese line, like Black Zarak and things like that, but not really. And I just think that a pink chrome dome as RC in that line would have stood out for that reason, maybe more than any for me.
Absolutely,
just like, oh, you're doing a repainted version of a toy I already own. That would have seemed really, really strange somehow.
See, I don't know, maybe I'm different then, because I look at that and I try and remember what I was like as a kid, and I was very fussy, so I picked up and stuff like that, but I don't think I'd have been as confused by that as any more than, say, Ironhide, compared to what it was like in the TV and the comics. But I think there's we can look, knowing the story of that RC now, and I think you look back at it and go, oh, it wouldn't have fit. But at the time, I don't know how well you would have been acquainted with a chrome dome or stuff. Most kids, because some kids would have had him, but it was not the same where you were being bombarded with media and stuff with it in, so it becomes that character. He was still at that point someone who only really appeared in an episode of the cartoon a lot of people might not have seen, or some comics they might not have read. It would have just been a toy to a lot of people.
But the point I'm making is that many of us didn't buy Ironhide and Ratchet as kids or ask for them, because they were such departures from the screen models. And I think if we had RC looking like basically that futuristic blocky car in pink, and then the box art being the proportions of Chrome Dome in pink, I think you might have experienced a similar sort of disconnect where people would have wanted an RC toy, would have been like, I don't know about that. That's really not putting me in mind of who I've fallen in love with on the screen, if you know what I mean. Yeah,
it's funny because, like you said about that guy earlier who didn't like Wreck-Gar, I didn't like most of the 86 movie toys at all. As a kid, I really disliked them, even though I had most of them. But it was that disconnect from the movie, because even though I'd had some of them before, so I was going in with that mindset of they were different. There's something about the movie, the way we talk about it as a toy commercial.
Mm-hmm.
But when you actually look at it, it's so, again, disconnected from that. With the amount of characters that are on screen that you couldn't get, or either don't have toys.
Oh, it's the worst toy commercial. It's absolutely does not do what it says on the tin.
But we talk about Ironhide and Ratchet and stuff like that, not looking like the cartoon. But that movie felt like it was saying new toys. That's what it was. But then those versions of those characters are so dynamic and so almost exciting the way they move, because they have that flashy animation and that really, really nice designs and stuff. And then you get the toys of something like Blur and Cup and stuff like that, and they are so far off that from what you've seen them doing in that. And to me, that felt very different to the G1 cartoon. When they did look completely different, it's just everything in that movie with that animation, the way they moved, the music, everything, something totally different. Like Blur, as a kid, I loathed that toy. Even today, it's one that I still don't really like because it's not even close. But
we'll get on to your ridiculous opinions later. But if you notice at the Instruments of Destruction scene, I think they were subconsciously setting the scene by destroying Ironhide, Ratchet, and Brawn on the shuttle. Like, these are the ones who look the least like their toys, kids. Yeah. And we're removing these from your life. Don't talk about Prowl. Don't talk about Prowl.
They made Ironhide a bit more toy accurate, if anything, didn't they?
Fantastic. That's a revelation. That's a revelation, yes.
Retcon.
And sales just picked up from the I can have a TV accurate Ironhide with no head. Yeah.
It is that scene in particular is brutal, isn't it? Because
how do you know he shot him in the head?
It's pretty obvious, isn't it?
No, he might have shot him in the shoulder.
To be fair, it's Megatron, and he usually missed, so it probably went just through the floor.
Been yeah. In fact, he probably blew a hole in the ship, and Ironhide just flew out.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
We did see him flying about City in the film.
Do you know the biggest thing? The biggest thing about that scene for me actually is the juxtaposition with what comes, because of course you get the headshot or whatever it is to Ironhide, you know, and the whole kind of dun 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 dun, you know, and that's it. And do you know what the next scene is? What it opens on?
It's hot rod fishing.
It's hot rod. Yeah, it's hot rod fishing, and it is literally like, and here's your new toy. It's just unbelievable.
And how good does he look? And then he's got the scene with the hoverboard and, you know, that transformational lookout mountain. I mean, I don't know about you, but I was sold.
Yeah, oh yeah, that transformation, that is probably the most thrilling transformation in the whole film. In the whole 90-minute runtime.
Any transforms. If I could just have one transformation sequence, it would either be that or that first roll call in the pilot of season 1.
Yeah, for sure.
That hot rod thing. Well, I remember even my brother, who wasn't even really into Transformers, being like, that's cool.
That's cool. I showed it, you know, I think I said to you, I showed it to my son. I didn't show him the whole film, just that, because it's, you know, it's quite uber violent. He's just a touch too young to it. But I did show him the hot rod sequence transforming, just so everything, all the fishing up to the bit where, you know, the shuttle comes in. And I remember the bit when it transformed and his jaw just hit the floor. And I actually audibly said, "Whoa," like that as he was watching it. And it was just a lovely thing to see. Absolutely lovely thing to see. And it's no surprise that even 35 years later, that scene is still capturing minds. But I actually think the hot rod toy holds up. Would you agree, Liam? Or
holds up?
As in versus, because I'm talking about Liam's crazy opinions that, you know, the toys were disappointing.
Well, that one.
Yep,
I think I said before.
I still haven't heard a word from him. Like I just heard mouth sounds.
Oh, sorry, I'm on mute. Can you hear me? No, I think I had that toy 3 times as a kid, so I did eventually grow to like it. But I love it more. But it's the same with a lot
What do you mean 3 times? It's like, did you get it? And it's like, nope. And then, all right, I'll try it again. Nope. Third time lucky.
Broke by my brother. The second one was the Target Master one to replace said one that was broke by a brother, and the other one I got from 20p from a car boot. Completely.
Maz, nothing about that should surprise you. This is the man who, in the last episode, had the revelation. At the last, it was a mini-sode actually, but had the revelation that he watched the movie a second time to see if something different had happened, or if he just remembered it wrong.
I was like 4.
He watched it wrong.
Oh dear, bless you.
You know what's funny about that is that also mirrored the first time I saw season 3 on the TV, and I was little and ran up and hit the side of the TV because I thought it was wrong.
You thought it was wrong?
Yeah, because they'd been showing the normal G1 cartoon, and the bit the last episode they did it was back to back, and the last one they showed was not the Sherman Dam one, but it's one of the ones when they're around a dam, and Starscream does that jump up into the, you know, above the waterfall, the little rainbow. And when it came back, it was season 3, and I was so confused. I was like, "No,
you would be.
What is this?" Really confused. It's different time, very different time.
It's a very different show, isn't it? At that point,
it's a different show. It is.
It's totally everything completely different. Just absolutely insane.
Hot Rod, it just at the time it just felt so different. But I liked Hot Rod. Hot Rod was one of the him and Ultra Magnus were the two. I think.
So that was what I was going to say. Is in fairness to you, and I'm going to put myself in the path of Maz's ire a little bit here as well. But actually, I don't think I was a major fan of the Cup toy as a kid. I think
No, I'm with you. I've not had any appreciation for Cup until recent years.
Right, same. So I love it now, and ever since I got the reissue version, TFC reissue, adore it. Absolutely adore it.
Super fun transformation.
Yes. I love the arms, love the legs, I love the click of the legs, the
closing the waist.
Oh man,
absolutely
love it.
Great moment.
Even love the way the feet pop out by pushing the wheels. All of it. It's actually probably, touch wood, one of my favorite G1 transformations. But I don't think I really appreciated it as a kid, and I think it was exactly what you were saying, Liam. I think it just felt so different to the movie interpretation, and the head didn't really look the same. Didn't really, kind of looks like an old man, but like not an old man in the way that he looks like in the film.
It's like that's one of the reasons I didn't like him. His head's like an advent calendar chocolate, because it's got that weird little flat bit on the back.
It's flat at the back. It's like half of it's missing.
Yeah. That's what it always reminded me of. But it's with those toys, like with Hot Rod and Cup. I just remember, even at that age, I could feel they were different, to the earlier toys that I'd had. There's this. I don't know how you describe it. Almost like a difference, like a lack of elegance compared. And even
did you feel that way about Hot Rod as well?
Yeah, because
there was something about Hot Rod as a kid. I always felt that was different, and I was always regretting buying Rodimus Prime instead of Hot Rod.
Oh yeah, but like if you pick that up and adapt them, you feel the differences because Hot Rod's so much.
They're exactly the same. They both have rubbish roofs that come off. Both have die-cast. Both have rubber wheels.
I don't know.
Extraordinary pretty head sculpts. Great colours.
I remember loving the car, but there was just this feel to it, and I don't think I was ready for it because I was that young. I think I couldn't have been that long into Transformers, or knowingly into them.
See, I think I was because obviously you and I are the same age, Liam. But I think actually for me, Hot Rod was the right time to kind of come into it. Whereas I think actually by comparison, a lot of the Diaclone era toys felt more fragile to me as a kid, and they did seem different. But I remember, probably as a slightly older kid, if anything, liking the Diaclone era toys and stuff like Inferno was a real favorite of mine. But I think Hot Rod was a love from day one, just because it felt awesome. It was just like I remember some kid having it at school, and instantly I was like, I want that toy.
Same. I felt the same about Cyclonus and Scourge as well.
Right.
Those were just insta-love figures for me, however different they were. And I think a movie that was so amazing is a massive influence on that, because it was, it's Cyclonus, and it's Scourge. But they were such fun toys. I think I played with those two much more than my other Transformers. I remember even having a Starship Enterprise from the Next Generation, and I would always use Cyclonus and Scourge as evil ships, when I was playing with it. I loved those toys so much. I even kept the tech specs so I could put down the number of a job interview years later.
Yes, I remember that story. Yeah, that's always a good one.
I was just going to say, like, one of the things I just really remember is the difference in, like, when you've got the Diaclone cars, they turn into actual cars. And so whatever the robot looks like with Ironhide and Ratchet, you're like wowed by that they're a car, and you accept that they're there.
Why did you appreciate them being cars? Because you know cars and you love cars, right? It's an impressive thing that they do.
It just, there was like a magic to it of something that looked familiar. Because a lot of shops around here had the little vans and stuff, so it always felt like something.
That familiarity is exactly why I liked Scourge and Cyclonus, because their vehicle modes were familiar from the movie, which I love. Like, I love cars, and I love toy cars, I love race cars, I love trucks. Okay, G1 Transformers turning into those and F-15 jets was mega. But also, cartoon was mega for me as well. So seeing those toys turn into those guys was huge. I didn't get that with Wreck-Gar, for example.
Yeah. See, I think Cup was the other one that I had just before the movie. So I think with that, there was no magic to it. I think the first time I got it, it turned to a robot and a strange
weird
thing.
Yeah, if you've not seen the movie,
it wasn't like you suddenly got a treat and were like, wow, you're like, oh, what's that? And then you obviously the flat head, and there's so much stuff like this.
The arms starting from halfway down the torso as well is a bit odd.
But it's even the way they fold in. It almost feels for a moment like the Diaclone cars, the way it rolls under, but it doesn't have that same like stopping point where it locks in. So
that's true, actually.
Right.
You remember you're pushing them, so everything felt like a weird backward step, which I guess is because it's experimental in their first attempt at doing it, but it suddenly felt like a difference. Things you expected weren't how they were, and things you knew were suddenly different.
That's a really good comparison, actually, between Cup's arms and like the Datsun arms or Jazz's arms, for example. That's they don't have a pegging point. I always found that a weird one because they were asymmetrical in the way that they went in, and that always, as a kid, struck me as quite strange because there weren't a lot of. Actually, thinking about it, Blue Streak and all of those guys, they were asymmetrical as well, but it never seemed that way in a way that Cup did. So there was something about that toy that did seem strange. And yeah, if you'd not seen the movie at the time, I can't even imagine, really. That must have been very jarring.
I love it now, though. That toy, I adore it. It's fantastic.
What, Cup?
Completely different. Yeah. It's a completely different view on it now. When I pick it up, it just looks really nice.
But you don't like Blur at the moment? Like, Blur is not a toy that you like?
Oh, no. I think Blur is one of the worst Transformers I've ever got. I remember getting that one, it being possibly the most disappointed I've ever felt.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, but because when you saw him on the screen, he was everything about him is about speed and dynamism. Everything he's doing is moving. And then you get that boy, and oh God, the robot mode, like, he looks like he's scrunched in. Like, you know, when you go out and you go, and someone goes, should have bought a coat, I told you. He's got that look. Everything about him is scrunched in at all times. But even his arms are like super squished in and straight. You know, like, and you were used to Transformers having not great articulation, but the arms were either proportionate generally, or, you know, you could move them. But his like that, and he had the tiny legs that are really squished together. He just looked like it's really cold.
The legs are weird because they are sort of articulated, but not. Like they bend at the knees, but not in any purposeful way. And actually, they do have backwards hip movement for transformation, but again, not in any purposeful way. So it's a weird one.
It's funny how it doesn't quite close up perfectly.
No.
In car mode, always kind of weirded me out as well.
There's a lot of like getting the knees at the exact right angle to try and clip the feet in, and it never quite works. But I have to say, I do like that toy a lot.
Same.
But I can also, hearing what you're saying, Liam, I can totally appreciate all of that, and I think it's valid.
Do you think it would have helped if it had the prototype's head sculpt, which is way closer to the cartoon model?
No, I think it's because he was so memorable in the film, and those attributes were so, you know, like the speed and the movement and everything like that, that when that toy came, and it's the complete antithesis of it. Like, there's no...
Couldn't you have just played with it really fast?
Well, no, it's the shapes. Like, even his chest is enormous. He looks like he's wearing like a hockey jersey. It's just enormous. Everything feels counter to what that toy is, and that horrible scraping noise of the hand flaps when they get...
a very delicate toy. Exceptionally hard to find in decent condition now. Very, very hard.
Shield clips, man.
The shield clips. There's numerous things, isn't it? The shield clips, the bits that you were talking about, Liam, that fold over his hands.
Floppy sleeves.
Sleeves. Well, broken sleeves as well. The discoloration is...
His head ray.
Yeah, the head ray gets bent, or it's been chewed on, or, you know, whatever. Sticker wear. It's paint rubbing off.
Paint wear.
Yeah.
Yep.
The paint off the front, the light blue sections on the front of the arms when they're in car mode is dreadful. I only have the Target Master version to this day, and I looked into, you know, getting an 86 version because the 87 one's got the belly button, of course, and I thought it would be fun.
I've got the 86 one.
Yeah, right. I thought it'd be fun to have both at one stage, and then after a while...
It is fun. No, I think you should still do it. I have the 86 one as well, and getting the 86 one was really great because it was a really good condition one. It was someone else's childhood one, but they'd preserved it beautifully. And again, that was at an age maybe 3-4 years ago for me that I got it, only about a year after the Target Master, and I was able to appreciate just how nice a toy it is because it was in great condition. Things were clicking, going into place, and it was just experiencing a new transformation, a new toy I didn't have all these years that I'm so familiar with. It's like, oh, I've got a Blur, an original Blur. And yes, modern Blurs are way better at being Blur, like Studio Series Blur or Titan's Return Blur. You know, those are two superb toys. But no, I disagree with you that it's impossible to appreciate that thing now. Because if we're going to start talking about proportions being wrong and how certain proportions make toys look, you've got to start talking about things like Double Dealer not being perfectly fitting, you know, with those little flappy arms of his, but massive shoulders and giant head. But that doesn't detract from that toy's fun. And I don't think what you're saying detracts from Blur's fun.
Yeah, but that's not what it is, though. Like, I can go on board with that. There's all the character and stuff, but Blur just always feels like...
I didn't say anything about character.
No, but that's what I mean. Like, there's it.
You don't know what you mean. You're not even listening.
I am listening and I'm responding in kind. But but even now, like when I pick it up, like it's not fun. It's not a fun toy because even like the car mode, I remember as a kid being excited for that. I thought that would be a saving grace. And then it's like, when people complain about jets having kibble underneath, and I never cared about that. But here it just felt like a block on this thing that they showed you looked really dynamic and exciting.
But
again.
I thought that was the case too because he's got those rubbish knee wheels, that sort of thing. But posing him for photographs now, I realized that, most of the time he kind of looks like he's hovering. Because it just sort of elevates that part of the front, and he's just sitting on the legs, which are right there, but also the rest of the chassis is above, so it kind of looks like the hover car that Blur is.
No, not a fan. I didn't like the shield either. I never liked that. I thought that was...
You didn't like the shield? What's your problem with the shield?
I don't even like the shield because it doesn't do anything. His arms don't move to do anything with it, so he just again, it fits into that proportions thing where he looks like he's freezing cold and everything's squished in, and it just, unpleasant.
So, would you say it's fair to say that you don't like Blur?
I wouldn't classify myself as a fan. I'll put it that way.
Do you know?
But I like the newer toys. We finally got there.
Of all the toys I thought we were going to talk about tonight, I didn't think Blur would be the hot topic. Do you know? It would be the one that would kind of divide opinion so much.
I kind of get what he means. For years, I didn't buy those toys. I didn't go looking for those toys when I entered the vintage hobby. Like Cup and Blur were like, no, I'm not going there. I don't need them. They don't look good. It was only years later when they came to me in like collections of bigger toys that I could say, okay, well, I own this now. I got it at a crazy good price and it's in great condition. I'm sure that had some effect on my appreciation for it. And maybe otherwise it wouldn't have been so easy to appreciate what they had. Like if I paid 70, 80 quid for a slightly worn Blur, maybe I would have had the same reaction. Like, why did I do that?
It's fair. It does wear really badly. But it's exactly all the same points we were saying about Wreck-Gar, isn't it? That if it's slightly knackered in any way, the sheen is taken right off, and it's so easy to knacker as well. But I can also appreciate it. It's a toy that I really like, I think, because I had it as a kid, so I've got some nostalgia for it. And I do really like the blue, and actually I kind of like the design of it anyway. I know it's not perfect by any stretch. And I could see arguments against it being, maybe like the most fabulous G1 toy of all. So I totally get what you were saying about it, Liam.
I love it though. I just turned around and
I still love it
on my shelf. I absolutely love G1 Blur.
I do like it more now as an adult. I got it the Christmas straight after the movie, so it was Christmas '86, and it was the most disappointing present of that day. But now as I'm older, I don't dislike it quite so much.
Yeah.
So you're telling me you didn't get a single more disappointing present than G1 Blur on that day?
No, because when I opened it, it was not the toy I was.
It's pretty good Christmas though, man.
It's not done badly. I mean, if that's his...
I hear how these words sound coming out of my mouth, but then it's just, I don't know. There's just something about that toy. But that's one of those ones where I've always wanted an ideal version of it ever since, and I think it's rooted in those memories. So when they did the Studio Series 86 one, I like that.
I do know what you mean actually, because I kind of feel like no toy. Well, certainly, we'll talk about modern toys maybe briefly, but the no toys for ages ever quite got cartoon Blur right. And actually, to be honest, I've never handled the Studio Series 1, but the look of it does not do it for me. I've got to be honest. I'm sure it's a fine toy. I'm sure it transforms really nicely. I've heard all of those points, but the look of it does not feel at all like the cartoon to me. That's just based on all the many, many, many photos I've seen of it. The one that actually does, and I'm sure people will disagree with me on this, is the Fans Toys one, bizarrely. It's the first toy of Blur. It's not a perfect toy by any means. It's hateful to transform. Hateful. Absolutely hateful. But the look at the robot mode and the way the robot mode handles is really nice. And in my opinion, it's the only toy I've come across that makes me feel like it's cartoon Blur. So I do get that. I think it's a tricky one. It's a tricky design to get right.
Can I blow your mind though?
Go on.
So I don't like the Fans Toys one, and do you know why? Looks too much like the cartoon.
Oh man, what?
I think we need to move on.
What are we doing here?
Because he's just making zero sense here. I think we've just established the reason he doesn't like G1 Blur is because he just doesn't like Blur.
It's not that it looks like the cartoon or not. It's that there's just this lack of dynamism to it. It doesn't capture that feeling. That
criminy, honestly.
And that toy, I just don't think it's a very nice looking toy or a nice toy to handle. It doesn't have.
Okay, so you and Grimlock and you and Blur, honestly, it's what is going on? What's
a positive? Can I ever you say there's one definitively great thing about that Blur toy?
Go on.
Something that straight to your mind, you go, that's great, and I remember it.
The colour.
The colour, yeah. The shape, the vehicle mode. I love it. Absolutely love it. I love that he has a shield.
I saw your mouth open and then sit there for a few seconds while you struggled to think of something to say, Maz. Don't even just follow Sixo there with the colour.
I was actually struggling not to say certain things. I think is more accurate.
You're going to say the camera froze. That's what it was.
Wow. Blur is certainly proven to be a contentious topic, I would say. Do you know what occurs to me is how weird it is that toy has never been reissued? And I always think it's a strange one because I remember coming back to vintage stuff.
Is it though?
You shut up. I remember coming back to vintage stuff and thinking, okay, it's dead easy to get a hot rod, dead easy to get a cup. Where's Blur? And the fact that you could only get a vintage Blur, and then you've got to kind of make the choice because there are really good reissues of hot rod and cup that do the Target Master and non-Target Master thing together. Whereas with Blur, you've really kind of get both. Of course.
They did a repaint of Cup. Can you imagine? It would have been brilliant to get an e-hobby repaint of Blur as well.
It would have been so nice. So nice. And I think there's some really lovely colours that you could put that mould through and have it look really, really stunning. Like an orange one or something like that could look really cool. I don't know what character or what. I'm sure they would have come up with something. But it's a shame that we never got another take on Blur. He's sort of been stuck there. But maybe,
say nothing.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe we'll move on, shall we? Because there are plenty more 86 you mess your face. There are plenty more 86 movie toys to talk about, not just Blur and Wreck-Gar. And we haven't really talked about Hot Rod all that much yet, but
because we've spent 21 previous episodes
I was going to say
extolling the virtues of G1 Hot Rod.
We probably have
best G1 toy that's ever been released.
Probably have covered him quite a bit, haven't we? So
yeah,
and Rodimus Prime to some extent, would you say? It's fair to say we've given Rodimus.
I think we need to give Rodimus a bit of airtime.
Well, I was going to say, actually, Rodimus for me is another toy that there's a bit of a theme emerging here, isn't there? Is one that if you've got it in So-So Nick, probably doesn't present the best.
I don't know. I think even in excellent Nick, the limitations are right there.
Yeah, it's not.
It's got qualities that I really like, but it is what it is.
The robot mode is a brick. Let's be honest. It's And half the car mode. The funny thing as a kid, I always remember was
But bricks have substance. It's more like a plank.
Yeah, it's a plank. Yes, it's a plank.
Plank with a spoiler.
In fact, you remember that thing? What was it? That thing planking that everybody on the internet was doing. It's like that, isn't it? If you just lie him down, that's what he's doing. Basically,
he can do the plank.
He can do the plank.
No, he can't because he's got no elbows.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I also think the fact that to transform him, you've got to lose half the truck mode, and the fact that it comes off, and then you've just got kind of a really crap hot rod, just kind of like half a car just lying there with the feet sticking out.
I don't think you can even justify by calling it a really crap hot rod. I don't think it's even halfway there.
No. It's not. It's a bizarre toy. It's one that I guess I really like. I've got tons of time for my Rodimus Prime.
But I can't explain it.
No, I can honestly sit there and say, yes, it's not a brilliant toy. Do you know what I mean? And I can totally quantify many reasons for that.
But the sound that the cannon in the trailer makes when you compress it and fold it away or extend it, that's satisfying.
Zip noise is amazing.
Yes, zip.
Yeah, it is. It is a zip noise, isn't it? It's a great feel as well. Oh, we've lost him.
He's going to recreate it.
He's going to. Yeah, here he goes. He's got his. I think we might be going for a wee, but
this is about to become the Rod Pod.
The Rod.
Are you ready?
Yeah, that noise.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
that and Ultra Magnus's arms. Those two noises.
Yeah, if you've got an Ultra Magnus that's actually able to move those arms with ease, like the reissue, unlike the vintage. But yeah, no, there's something about that toy. I love the vehicle mode, and that's why I really want the rubber-wheeled vintage or reissue, because I think rubber wheels and the hubs that come with the rubber wheel one really accentuate what's great about vehicle modes generally. It looks like something you want to roll, and it would be a satisfying feeling to roll it along, whereas when you roll this one, it's a bit scrapey. It's like rubber wheel Magnus compared to
it's them same plastic wheels they use quite frequently because they use that on Metroplex as well.
Yeah, it's on Metroplex too.
Yeah,
and was it Ultra Magnus as well where they swapped him out for? Yeah,
and Italian Optimus Prime for a while too.
Why did they make the running change for those toys? Is it just cost cutting? I guess
it's cost cutting. I mean, think about all the changes that Magnus went through, losing plastic windows and rubber is no longer used. Plastic was used for the wheels. Then paint was reduced, the amount of paint. The die cast on Rodimus Prime's feet was replaced with black plastic, and that's the version we got in Europe entirely, versus, Canada and the US getting the metal wheel Rodimus Prime with the rubber wheels. It's just, cost cutting.
It's fair to say, though, I still think, actually, that, regardless of the design or whatever, stuff like Rodimus, even with the plastic wheels, still presents pretty nicely. It's still a nice-looking toy.
It's also Rodimus Prime.
Yes.
The dude from the movie who's running like that while Unicron is exploding behind him, he's the hero. He's incredible looking in the movie.
Stiff legs that don't
I was just going to say, you're talking about Blur not moving like the film. I mean, that...
You know what I mean? That's what I mean. We talked about how iconic those moments are in that movie, but none of those toys can do. They're like
he's running, and then you get the toy in hand, and you're like, oh yeah, what a plank.
I remember as a kid being absolutely wowed by Rodimus's vehicle mode. That's even today. That's still stunning. I still think that's the best version of that toy, other than MP9.
The vehicle mode is better than the robot mode. I would say that's one of the toys, G1 toys, that can legit say the vehicle mode is better.
Yeah, I remember as a kid being very disappointed with the robot mode of Rodimus, his old man face, but the vehicle mode, it was always straight back into that.
Base is cool too. His trailer's kind of wicked. It comes out.
The
blast shields, man. Blast shields. Insta-lose. Blast shields. Always missing.
Annoying that there was nowhere to keep the blast shields in vehicle mode. Like, they didn't slot in at all or anything. That was an oversight. That was something and that's the kind of thing that on modern toys just wouldn't happen now. There's no way that you would get like this little accessory for the one mode. I'm sure the Kingdom Rodimus has them built in or something. I don't know.
Well, hey, at least G1 Rodimus's trailer closes, right?
Hey, you say no bad things about my boy.
Didn't say nothing.
No, but do you not think the Rodimus trailer feels like a really weird first attempt from Hasbro to call back to the Optimus trailer, but quite badly in a way? In the way, it's not a bad trailer, but the Optimus trailer, the stuff goes inside it, and the Rodimus trailer, like the blast shields, feel like extra parts, like roller or stuff like that.
Yeah,
they
maybe
don't fit in, but you still got a deck.
It's mad that they don't fit in there, isn't it?
It is mad.
I know. It's such a weird thing.
There should just be a little slot or something for them to go somewhere. It is mad. I've got to be honest, though, in regards to stuff going inside it, the cars or whatever, not until that Kingdom Rodimus toy did it ever really even occur to me. That picture obviously came out and everybody suddenly was like, oh my God, stuff can go in the trailer. It never even occurred to me that would be something that I would need or want on a Rodimus toy. At no point in the 80s. Yeah, it's
a great feature.
It's a very, very, very cool feature. All credit to the Kingdom Rodimus toy, long as it is. But the I got to say that. But
the Subway Mobile.
Yeah, oh man, it is a long toy.
Yeah, it's a submarine with wheels. That's very well put, I think.
I know, I meant like the Subway sandwich. It's like
I've heard many, many, many good things about Kingdom Rodimus, so I'll take that on face value.
I love that toy.
It's good. But it never occurred to me back in the 80s that the original, that it didn't open or have cars going into it or whatever. It would have been cool.
It was Rodimus Prime's personal space, wasn't it?
Yeah. It never even occurred to me that it was supposed to be that kind of a trailer. That I don't know. I don't know what was supposed to be in there. It was just like a big
Rodimus. Rodimus was supposed to be in there.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just that.
All his toys. That's where he keeps them.
Right.
I'm really keen to buy the rubber-wheeled version of this toy in excellent condition to see how different it feels and what kind of effect it has on how I feel about the toy. Because I do actually love the toy. I've got so many great memories of this toy, and I was really keen to add it to my vintage collection. And I've got a really nice vintage one at the moment. But I really would love to know what the rubber-wheeled one feels like. And I want a vintage one, ideally. I'm really, really keen to know.
Probably feels a little bit rubbery, if that helps.
Yeah, that's actually removed my need to
there you go.
buy it and find out now.
I'm just glad to be of assistance.
The Transformers will return after these messages.
Right, well, it's that time of the podcast where we're going to talk about our sponsor, which is TFSource.com. Check them out for all your Transformers and third-party needs. And today we're going to take a quick look at their website and see what they've got in stock and up for pre-order at the moment. Lots of good stuff going on there, lads. For me, I've got to say, it's Masterpiece Thundercracker, old MP52 Plus. Don't really get why it's Plus, but it is. It's the new Thundercracker that's really kind of caught my eye. I have one on the way. Cannot wait for that. So very, very excited. How about you, fellas?
Do you know, I'm still looking at that Turtles van with the pizza wheels. It still catches my eye. But the other thing was Sexy Walk Silencer from Bingo Toys.
It's really nice.
That's an amazing stock image. It's just such a good stock image.
Yeah, it's really good. I was looking at that and thinking, why don't more photos of toys have that walk. I'm going to do it more often. I'm going to give it a bit of a go. I have done walking shots like that before, but I need to do more of them now, having seen that.
Yeah, but the serious answer for me is, now that I've had an opportunity to play with and photograph Fans Hobby Ace Hitter, I love the siren repaint, the red buzzer. I think that looks great.
Yeah, I'm
and
excited.
I know it's a fun toy. And you were absolutely right. It is so much easier and more enjoyable to transform Ace Hitter than Athena was. Athena, I wouldn't want to transform to car mode again.
I really feel like they refined it between those two toys. It's because it's a similar-ish transformation, but you can see the kind of evolution of it. So I'm dead excited about Cap that they've got coming up as well. It's coming up at the end of this month, I think. The third one, the hose head.
That Armada Megatron is all I'm looking at. The more they publish photos of it, the more I just cannot wait to get my hands on it.
Yeah, that's been shunted back ever so slightly. They sent out a note just saying it's gone back to January, but still cannot wait. Wait.
Same.
Very, very excited for that.
It looks as fun a toy to me as that TFC Toys Rolling Thunder does. It just looks that level of I'd love to get my hands on it sort of thing.
I got this weird kind of dichotomy now, though, where because I know that I'm going to be doing videos on all of these, where the more features and gimmicks that these toys have, the more I'm like, my God, that's going to be...
How are you getting on with that Battle Convoy video?
Yeah, right, exactly. That's the proof is in the pudding.
Later.
Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, it's not work, and I'm never going to complain about it, of course. It's still loads of fun, but there is a kind of daunting aspect of it as well. Of like, oh man, that's like going to be... That's a job. That's a job to do. Do you know what I mean? It's yeah. But anyway... You know, it's like Liam complaining about Blur being his worst ever Christmas present. Do you know what I mean? You know what you're going to do?
Correct opinions.
Right. Speaking of Liam, what's caught your eye?
Well, you know me, always prepared. So I have the page open this time, and that, there we go. See.
Wow.
You know what? For all the times we've done this, I didn't realize that you could have a window open. That's what you were doing. I was like, they must be looking on the phone or something. But,
I did wonder why you kept asking me what was on the page, and I was like, just look at it.
Have you just learnt about tabs in internet browsers? Is that what we're just discovering now? Yes.
No, I realized I could still hear you talking without seeing your faces on the video.
Oh my God, the wonders of technology.
But yes,
that's why he's never looked away. He's worried we'll go. So if he looks away.
Don't leave. But yes, I am quite enjoying this tiny-bodied, big-headed little Optimus Prime here.
Yeah, cool.
Oh yeah, I saw that. It looks cool.
He looks pretty rad, as the kids might say. So yeah, quite like that. An android. I think that's what that is.
Is there a Megatron as well, or just an Optimus?
If there is one, it's not on this front page. Let's just say that.
Okay.
Is there ever just an Optimus though?
No.
Anymore?
How long till they do the black one? That's good. That's inevitable, isn't
it? Yeah, it's a given at this stage, I would say. So yeah, that does look good. I actually think that Megazord as well looks pretty ace. I don't know if you've seen that the Power Rangers thing. That looks really, really cool.
Apparently, you can take the faceplate off, and it's got the little Rangers in there.
But does it have pizza wheels?
I need that. Have you seen just on Turtles that you can also get? Perhaps they have it on this website. You know, they've reissued the vintage like Turtles van and the Turtle Blimp, but in the original packaging.
No.
Yes, they're all over America and Australia apparently for like $50, but not in this country.
Oh, that'd be
from
nice thing to have.
TFSource, if they have them.
Or they might have it on Toy Source.
Yeah,
probably on Toy Source if anything. So cool. Yeah, well, lots of good stuff in stock there. So do check them out. TFSource.com. Got loads of third-party stuff. They've got some vintage stuff actually as well. They sent out a tweet this week and probably on other socials as well, saying that they actually had some G1 stuff come into stock.
Probably gone.
It probably has. I noticed I think they had Thundercracker, G1 Thundercracker, and a couple of other bits. Dirge. Yeah. It looked pretty good actually. So, but yeah, it may have gone already, but worth having a look. But yeah, loads of good stuff on there. Check them out. TFSource.com for all your Transformers and third-party needs.
We now return to the Transformers.
Right, well, we're back, and you know what another good 1986 toy is? Is Springer, isn't it?
Springer is an interesting one.
Oh, yeah? Why is that?
Because it's a toy which has features that, for me, tie it a little bit to 1985.
Right, I could see that.
And then it's also got this wildly 1986 nowhere near Diaclone microchange kind of feel as well. I think it's the way the rubber wheels look. They just look straight off a G1 car.
Yeah, they really do.
With the little chrome hub and the rubber wheels. And I mean, that car mode is really pushing it, isn't it? Like,
Yeah,
as far as triple changes go, that's like, suspension of disbelief.
It's a weak one.
But the helicopter mode is wicked.
Yeah, I like the helicopter. The car mode I appreciate because it's got the bit that kind of slides, to kind of truncate the proportions or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember always being confused as a kid as to where that bit was supposed to go, if it was supposed to be longer for helicopter or whatever. And I do really like the action of the back bit of the helicopter kind of sliding out of the legs. I think that's really nice. Do you think it's the size of it? I was going to say about Springer, the thing that always gets me is that he's so small.
But that's the kind of thing that for me ties it to 1985 as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. I think that's it. Is that it feels more like a Blitzwing or something like that, doesn't it? Because it's kind of in that size class.
I so wish his face was painted. That would make such a difference, wouldn't it? Other than just being solid green the whole way through.
Yeah, the face is not the best, I would say.
The stickers are possibly the worst.
So I got recently a vintage. Because this is only a vintage G1 Springer, no reissue, apart from maybe, I'm sure there's some KOs of it, I think there are. But I got a lovely vintage Springer, and I wanted a non-stickered one because when they've been stickered up, they inevitably look dreadful. And I'm glad I got it, but man, firstly, the stickers are horrible to apply for the most part, and it's the ones on the wheel arches on the top that are just
the bumpy ones.
Oh man.
I think those are factory.
I can't remember actually, but they look. There are a couple of them like that are very hard to apply. So I'm trying to remember actually. Maybe they are factory, those ones, but it's
the ones that are cut incorrectly for. I think it's either his shoulders or his or his shins.
Yeah, there are some
just not cut right.
But the most egregious thing on mine is that they won't stay down. And in the absence of Toy Hack's Sticker Fixer, which was a godsend, please start making that again. Toy Hacks,
come on, guys, start it up.
Just get it back on the.
I've been making a list of things I'm going to use Sticker Fixer every time I move or dust my collections. Like, yes, Sticker Fixer is needed for this. I'm really, because my other tube just dried up completely, and I used it regularly.
I just need that Sticker Fixer because they're on the ones on the legs, on the sides of his arms as well. And it's to the point now where if I have him in a photo, particularly in a group shot, lineup or whatever, I'm literally at the last second there, just trying to press them down and sort of like rub them a bit to hope that they stick. And then I take the picture as quickly as possible. I'm almost like pressing the shutter button and it's on a delay, like whilst I'm still pressing the stickers down because they just will not hold at all. Yeah. It's absolutely a nightmare.
I completely understand. And I also just don't like the look of some of them, like the ones on his shins with the sort of diagonal bits. They look so bizarre.
They're actually, I quite like the look of them actually. And they actually remind me of Diaclone stickers a bit as well, no? With kind of some of the weird detail and stuff.
Shoulder ones definitely with the triangle on. 100% remind me of Diaclone and Microchange. But yeah, no, maybe you've got a point. Still don't like them.
Fair enough. It's an odd toy all round. Yes. I guess because it's so small is the main thing for me. I do like the design. The car mode is a bit, but the car mode was a bit duff in the film and the cartoon and stuff as well, wasn't it? It was never, it was never a primary focus.
It was a futuristic Robin Reliant.
Yeah, it was a little bit, but with the wheel at the back.
Yeah.
I almost wonder if he was intended to be a triple changer in the film because he transforms once into a car and it was very much a kind of version of the helicopter, whereas all the other triple changers do something weird to get into a third mode, don't they? Like they flip over. I mean, look at blooming Sandstorm, the effort that goes to.
Wonderful example of how to do it.
That is perfection, honestly. And Springer is not as good, it's fair to say, as a toy. Plus, it's really easy to lose the rotors.
Yes. And the chrome wear on that toy is just mad.
Yeah.
Everything from the rotors to the guns, almost always green. The green plastic underneath has come through. It's such a difficult toy to find in good condition.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
And of course, the first releases had the metal chest, which chip paint really badly.
Yeah.
And that's and then there's the paint wear on the window as well. What a toy.
I don't think I've ever handled a metal chest version of Springer.
I think it's a bit unwieldy. I don't think the balance is there.
I could see that because he doesn't stand up very stably at all anyway, actually, the robot mode. He's not a solid dude. Do you know what I mean? I just think it's a weird one because you look at the character in the film and he's obviously one of the tallest characters apart from Magnus. And then you look at the toy And I don't know, I can kind of see how characters like Blur and Hot Rod and those guys, how through the gestation of the film, how they kind of came about. And Springer, I don't, do you know what I mean? It doesn't, it looks
it's so far off.
Yeah,
isn't it? There's so much.
It looks like it was a Diaclone toy that was ported over and that they stuck in the film. Rather than one that was designed retroactively. So it's really weird.
Except the Diaclone triple changer probably has a lot better proportions, and I just think a lot about that Diaclone triple changer plane helicopter looks better than Springer does.
I also think the arms are very strange. The way that they fold forward, and then the way that they kind of sit almost with his shoulders out in front. It's a weird look generally. I as we're talking about it now, I'm almost convincing myself that it's actually one of not my least favorite G1 toys, but it's definitely not a highlight for me.
Yeah, I think the affection for it comes from it being Springer.
Yeah.
And when he's in copter mode, you're looking at that thinking, yeah, that's Springer, with a bit of chrome and a bit of lovely paint. And
yeah, the copter mode is a highlight. That's a standout. Aside from the weird arms on the side of it, but other than that, all good on the copter mode. But yeah, the robot mode it's a bit of a letdown.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I got the Gold Box Classics era version. I remember because I'd had it before and I wasn't a fan. And when that one came, I thought, oh, maybe give it another go. And I was not a fan of it then either. I just,
I'm still waiting for my G1 Springer. I have one on the way. I've just got to finish paying for it. And it's stickers applied, but it seems to be perfect. So it's one of those massively rare occasions where a stickers applied toy, totally vintage, looks like it hasn't been used. And I'm really looking forward to experiencing it again now, after all these years again. I used to have Canadian G1 Springer, which is actually really rare. It's called Ricochet. The Canadian name for G1 Springer is Ricochet. And I had that back in 2001, and that was the last time I had it. So I'm really looking forward to handling the toy again. It's been that long. It's been 20 years.
Oh my God.
Wow.
What?
That's horrific.
I'm looking forward
to
all the posters, how it's like the new classic toy. I'm excited for you to get it. Like,
yeah. There's some
really
weird,
looking forward to
there's some weird things on that toy, like how the sort of shoulder pad sections around, like the wheel arches, I suppose, how they click up and down and things like that. And it's always kind of hard to know exactly which configuration they're supposed to be in any given mode. It's a weird one. Speaking of which, another weird toy for you, and one that I would say is legitimately not a favourite, is Wheelie.
Yes, I agree.
Very lame duck of a toy. It's like
I love the car mode.
Yes, I love the car mode too.
Cool. Car mode's
the
cool.
Robot mode.
Beyond that, it's one of the worst out there.
Yeah,
for G1.
I mean, it's definitely the worst G1 Minibot by a country mile.
It doesn't even stand.
No.
It does not stand. And how has that happened? And even the reissue just still doesn't stand.
No, it doesn't. The legs, it's because the legs are not kind of joint up. Whereas I feel like if the legs were just a solid piece, it would actually be a little bit more stable, but it's impossible to get the 2 feet. Even the repainted version, is it Dion?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Even that,
yes, exactly.
Forget it.
But it is such a lovely car mode. And I actually think if it did stand up and was solid, I could totally get on with that. And it could be G1 Wheelie. I was like, okay, that's G1 Wheelie. That's just how he is.
It's so far removed. Yeah, it's got all the dairy curves as well. I think that's what makes the robot mode somehow weirder. It's how curvy he is. Everything about it just looks really strange. It's just, I don't know, like the face and the chest and the
It's
really,
it's just a really
arms.
Nothing toy to me. I don't know. Like I legitimately can find good to say about most G1 toys. And yes, the car mode and Wheelie I really like, but the robot mode is just so crap. I mean, the legs are just spindly.
Another one who looks like he's wearing a 90.
Yeah, I was just going to say, he looks like he's wearing, his dad's T-shirt or something, because it's kind of this little spindly legs just sticking out from the bottom of him, very unpurposely. The proportions are horrific. The arms are just non-existent. They're like, doesn't really have hands or anything. They kind of fold down from the sides of his head. He's like a bizarre triangular shape. He's got that little flap for his head. The face is awful, frankly. Is really bad face sculpt. And that flap even is like one that I always remember people losing as a kid, like because it comes off. But then is it supposed to sit at a forward angle like that, like a little cap, which presumably it is? or you get
Or
people
like a toilet seat.
Yeah, exactly, all the way up, and it just looks terrible.
But it's mad how some people really love that toy, isn't it? I mean, old
Yeah.
Ticknat's gone and done his own GCWO entry for it. He's so enamoured with Wheelie that none of us wanted.
I know, it's because he knew that if any of us got our hands on it and had to write about it, we'd be
slaughters.
like, ugh, do you know what I mean? So, well, I've just done my entry for you. There you go. Someone can type that up, and that's it.
Isn't this on-screen model of him is really cool looking?
Yeah.
So to the point where Titan's Return Wheelie was one of the best toys of that scale I've handled. It was a wicked transformation and looked great. It could have been done way better than that, surely.
It is the thing, though. Like, I know we were talking about it earlier, but it is a thing how those characters in particular from the movie are so identified with the cartoon in a way the other Transformers aren't, and it's so, I don't know, it's so different how they turned out like that. Particularly Wheelie, and again,
he just fell too far from the tree, I think.
Yeah.
But it's even then, I think, even without the character from the film, it's just a bad toy.
It doesn't have anything of his own, does
No,
it?
it's just a bad toy.
It's not a fun toy to handle and then pose because it doesn't.
No. It's one that I would say is just an out-and-out bad G1 toy, and I say that very rarely about G1.
Agreed. I absolutely agree with you, and I feel entirely the same.
Yeah,
Sorry, Kit.
It's got this weird alien vibe. It doesn't work. There's nothing about the robot where you go.
I agree.
Even on its own, there's the saving grace to it. You're like, oh, I could appreciate that or something else. It looks like it was done wrong.
Yeah.
Basically.
And am I right in saying that on the Hasbro card, it's packaged in robot mode?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know.
Because actually, I don't think any of them came packaged in car mode anymore. Minibots after 1984.
I guess that's right.
It's just the pre-run.
I think you're right. They were all in robot mode.
At least if you could get a carded wheelie in car mode, it'd look superb as a display item. But didn't even give you that.
They weren't even trying to fool the kids at this point, were they? They were just like, "Here's your crap toy. Get on with it." Do you know what I mean? And let's be fair. Even as a kid, I don't recall anybody clamoring for a toy of Wheelie, but it was quite. Is that word again? It was quite ubiquitous. I remember a lot of people had it as a child.
I didn't know anyone who had it.
I knew quite. I knew quite a few people.
My older age.
I had it. It's just. I always remember getting it, but I remember being really besotted with the wheels. I don't know why the wheels. I've always been really fond of the wheels because they're grey and really little. There's just something neat about them.
Car mode's fun. At least there's that.
Nice colours as well.
It's a fun car mode. Yeah, and it's
the colour scheme's
good for photographs.
Yeah, I mean it's one that you kind of got to own, isn't it? If you collect G1, it's just one of them. So, but yeah, yeah. Well, let's move on then to something that is a little bit more of a a bit more favourable, you might say, which is the boy Ultra Magnus. Of course, is the only. Maz is already pulling a little face of just awe. It's the only toy.
Fine Autobot.
Yes.
A fine Autobot.
Indeed. And the only toy today that is a hand-me-down, interestingly, although done in different colours.
Guys, what a toy Ultra Magnus is. What a fantastic toy. And I honestly think as the years go by, I'm starting to like it more than Optimus Prime as that mold. It's just fantastic. Everything about it is brilliant.
Man, that Christmas I got Blur. I also got Ultra Magnus, so you can understand why the attention was all on that. But I remember.
But then you could carry Blur on Ultra Magnus. You could, do the whole Autobot cars in trailer thing.
Why
you need them.
Why would I want to make Ultra Magnus look worse? Awful.
Wow.
Piece of junk on the back. You know what? Because I never had the original Optimus Prime before that, so that was my first experience of that mold. But I knew straight away what it was, despite not having had the toy. I knew what it was, and so it became like a white Optimus Prime. But I just remember that it was such a special toy, putting that together for the first. Because
fantastic in box, looks tremendous in the box.
That's the other thing. The box, I just remember being like opening it and just being like, wow.
Yes.
And the noises, that's the thing I remember most about, because I still remember putting it together for the first time. It's all the noises versus anything else.
Again, it's the arms, isn't it? It's the little clink, clink, clink of the arms as you retract them and expand them and things. But yeah, like you, I think I had it before the second-hand Optimus Prime G1, the original one that I got, and again was just absolutely fascinated by the white Prime of it, and then obviously like every kid in the 80s saw the return of Optimus Prime on VHS and instantly thought that it was the alloy-coated Optimus Prime, the hate plague resistant Optimus Prime. just with a blue face for some reason. I'm trying to think actually if mine even had a blue face or a white face or which
mine
version
did.
it was.
Mine was actually a UK bought rubber wheeled painted Magnus, and I think it made a huge difference because it looked like a premium toy,
Right?
And it still does. I mean, my childhood one is quite yellow, discoloured, still got all its parts. And when I've dug that out again about a year or two ago in London, I still didn't have a rubber wheeled painted Magnus in the kind of condition I collect now. But even my childhood Magnus, when I put it all together, put the head on with the painted face, I was stunned. I remember tweeting how stunned I was by how good it looked, even with the faded colours and a bit of looseness. And just that experience as a kid of assembling Ultra Magnus as the super robot.
Yeah, definitely. The painted face makes such a difference. It's
all the difference.
The plain blue face will never compete with that, and it does. It's almost criminal that they stopped painting the face because it just it looks
for kids. I agree.
Yeah, it looks very.
But now as an adult, it's a great novelty. It's a brilliant curiosity, and I really enjoyed photographing plastic wheel Magnus with the blue face, and I took loads of photographs of mine, my vintage one, and I think it's really special. If you have the other one as well, you know.
I don't think I even knew there was a plastic wheel Magnus until I saw your pictures, because my vintage one had the rubber wheels, and then the reissue that I got, the early 2000s, the first one, also had the rubber wheels, and then the one I was given was the rubber wheeled one, and then the reissue I bought again was also. So it's only when I saw your photos. I've never had the non-painted face.
It's one of those toys when it gets reissued, it's always the rubber wheels version, which is really nice. All of the Takara reissues are rubber wheels. The Shining Magnus, all of that are rubber wheels, which is great. So I have the Takara reissue of it, and I love it. Absolutely,
it's wonderful. It's superb.
Yeah,
one of those reissues that was done thoroughly right.
Yeah, definitely. Just holds up. Still, you had some trouble, didn't you, trying to find one that hadn't yellowed?
That's right. Yeah,
M.A.S.K.
It's a tough. It's just one of those toys with so much white on it, and it's so visible because you've got die-cast painted white alongside plastic white. It's just so obvious when it goes.
It was also, can I say, one of the toys, and I know we've talked about this on a couple of occasions, like Grimlock and what have you, but it was one of the toys as a kid that utterly fascinated me because I became distinctly aware that it had extra features. And
the seat in the little chest plate.
Well, yeah, there was so much. There was the seat in the little chest plate. There was the seat, because bearing in mind I didn't have a Prime, I don't think.
Yeah, the cab.
The seat in the cab. And I also remember figuring out as a kid that you could put the head, the helmet head, on the little kind of wing thing for the chest.
Yeah.
And
you must be in like the 1% of Western children who figured that out.
Oh yeah, I remember thinking, is this coincidence that it can that they could click together?
Collectors today still have no idea. It's such a common response now.
Absolutely
when you
mad.
Post photos like
that.
Yeah,
I don't think I ever used it in like play or whatever, but I remember doing it and just being absolutely taken with what's this toy and why are there all these bits to it that don't make sense. You know, there was and it felt like I was missing something, and of course I was, because I didn't have Diaclone drivers and things like that to go with it. So very strange.
Still such a great toy.
Yeah,
and it's amazing that you're still left with such a great toy when you take out the wheels on the chest plate that make it roll along, when you take out the Diaclone drivers that can sit virtually everywhere, when you don't have a clue that the trailer has like two completely different modes, like a repair bay and a launch pad and just a base as well, and then the powered buggy, the little parts forming buggy guy that was just omitted completely.
I have to say, when
Diaclone powered convoy, if that's how good Ultra Magnus is, you can see how incredible Diaclone powered convoy.
Well, that little buggy dude. When you obviously got one recently, and it came to my house for me to kind of forward on to you, and I have to be honest, getting that, and just even for what I had it in my possession for 24 hours or something before shipping it off.
Special, isn't it?
I was thrilled to see it. I'd never seen it in hand before. And I remember just assembling it because I said to you, do you want me to take a look at it? And you were like, yeah, just check it's all okay before sending it on. And taking it out of the box and assembling it and just being like, wow, okay. I don't know, it just felt really special. Like it was kind of a missing link, if you will. You know, it's something I'd never seen in hand.
No reason why we shouldn't have got that in Transformers apart from to save costs, because everything about it is Transformers-y. It's perfect.
Yeah, it
even holds Magnus's weapons. It's so great.
It's almost like a 6-gun thing, isn't it? With Metroplex,
yes.
it's that kind of assembly piece. It absolutely would have fit in a year where you also get Metroplex, or like it actually reminded me of the way that the arms go into Scamper, for example, although it's much smaller. It absolutely would have fit. So it's a shame it didn't happen. But yeah, you're right. The powered convoy color scheme on the reissue and everything, and obviously the original is mind blowing. I wonder why they changed it for the movie. Do you think it was the color scheme thing again, just to make him a bit brighter and more vivid?
I think because if you think of the Diaclone version of Powered Convoy, it does not have the vibrant blue that the reissue one has. It's a very navy blue sort of color,
darker,
and the red is also not quite as vibrant. It's different. It's definitely the trailer being a different grey as well, and that dark blue. I couldn't look at the reissue and say that wouldn't have worked in the movie, because I think it would have, because it's such a lovely color, lovely light blue. But I guess having the completely different colors with the sky blue and the white cab, maybe that did fit in better with the palette of the movie guys. I don't really know why they changed the color. I mean, no one would have complained.
No, I can only assume that's what it was, to kind of make it a bit more, I don't know, a bit more kind of baby blue, kind of toyetic something. I don't know.
It's a big departure going from that blue cab with the Optimus coloured head. That's another thing, actually. It had an Optimus coloured head as well. Well, close enough.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Whereas actually the all white
super different
Prime is very different. It's really, really different, for sure. So, and white fists, which come in handy later on down the line as well. For
butlers, yeah.
I'm thrilled they changed the colours. I really am. I'm so glad we have Magnus in these colours, because Diaclone Powered Convoy exists.
Yeah.
I think, I've got no problem with G1 Ultra Magnus in the way that he is. I mean, I even love the unpainted version. I think it's great. Fantastic toy. What a presence in robot mode as well.
Yeah.
So much play value, just off the scale play value.
And the cab always falling out the back.
I don't think you're doing it right, mate.
But it's the little hand pegs, that's it. That's all that's holding him in there.
There's plenty of friction in that, though, almost a worrying amount.
Yeah, I was going to say.
When you manage to get loose arms over time, it just kind of tends to fall off the back.
No, if anything, I get nervous trying to take it out on all of mine. I actually, removing it is a bit that I don't always look forward to. I live in fear of the day that the pegs snap off.
Right.
Did you guys play with your toys as children? Did it? I'm not getting
frequently.
Magnus got a lot of playtime.
Magnus got
Mint Magnus surviving forever.
I don't have a Mint Magnus, dude. He's got floppy arms and everything, but I don't think even the legs stay flat down against the trailer in robot mode anymore.
Oh, they kind of hinge back slightly. Yeah, I think mine used to be like that.
But yeah, Magnus, total win.
So then we're going to round out our little tour of the Autobots, because it has been all Autobots until this point. And this point as well, and actually talk about the cassettes, because of course those are, I guess, almost easy to forget about, aren't they? Because they're, when you think movie toys, maybe people don't kind of consider that or whatever, but they are very important in that lineup. And they were, of course, designed specifically for the Transformers line as well, which I think is really kind of fascinating, because Blaster himself, of course, was a microchange toy, much as Soundwave was, and Soundwave, came with his own cassettes and all of that. But then here, I think this is really fascinating to think they actually designed cassettes to mirror the ones from Microchange, but also that would work with the Blaster toy, which had been a very different thing in its original incarnation as part of Microchange. So it's a whole fascinating setup. Lots going on with that. And I was also just going to briefly mention as well that we've already talked about old Ticknat and his incorrect opinions about Wheelie. But other than that, he actually did some detective work, didn't he? And uncovered that, he basically assembled all of the product ID numbers from all of these toys. And I found his post at the time, it's about 4 years ago, I think, on TFW 2005. And
it was the patents as well you looked at.
That was right, yes.
Patents and assortment numbers.
It was the patent and assortment numbers, yeah. And he went through and he discovered that basically all of the numbers for the 1986 toys range from 5791, which is Metroplex, all the way up to, I think these are in order, all the way up to 5988, which is Cyclonus. And then everything in the middle of that you've got is, Runabout, Runamuck, Rodimus Prime, Hot Rod, all of those are kind of in the middle, all the combiners, everything, except for Eject, which is 5612. So that is like quite far ahead of Metroplex at 5791. So he stands out as presumably having been
planned for 85.
Planned earlier. So maybe, I mean, it's all conjecture. It's none of it is known. But the implication is that potentially, they had in mind that they wanted cassettes for Blaster when he was first released in 85, and they only got around to doing them for 1986.
Isn't it like the only toy that's released in 1986 that's designed to interact with a toy from earlier, if you don't count Magnus?
Well, yeah, because you've got Metroplex obviously interacts with some of the combiners and things like that, but that's all same year. So yes, I think so. Anyway, I would think it's right to say. I think that's really interesting because, well, the other thing, of course, is that it implies that Eject was actually the first Transformers toy specifically designed for Transformers that wasn't a hand-me-down from Diaclone, Microchange, Toybox, any of that stuff. Takatoku. It was the first specifically designed Transformers toy, Eject, which is weird. But also, of course, in the film, I think I'm right in saying that Eject and Rewind were going to be one character to begin with, weren't they?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Bolts, I think it was called. So they weren't originally supposed to be two robots. It was just going to be one called Bolts. Apparently, there's a script or something, and both of their bits, like where they're fighting Ravage and all of that, like the separate bits that they have, was all done by the one character, and it was a bit more prominent. So, and I think that was what TICNAT had sort of wondered, was whether that patent number or whatever it is, that 5612, whether that was for Bolts originally, and then it got turned into Eject later because they needed it to be one of them. I don't know, but it's a really kind of fascinating point of history.
Yeah. It's a great bit of detective work. I found out something interesting about these cassettes some years ago, and it was a new discovery at the time, that the sticker on Steeljaw next to his head is reversed, or rather that it's in the wrong place, because if you look at the sticker that's on the back end of Steeljaw in tape mode, it's a lion's mane, and if you imagine that sticker next to his head, it actually would have the pattern of a lion's mane.
No way. I've got to look at that now.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's what it was, that was the revelation.
I'm so going to have to check out my Steeljaw now and just make sure of that. So actually, Ramhorn and Steeljaw and Eject and Rewind I have a little bit of affection for, because they were the first toys as a teenager or whatever, I think, that I sort of remember getting that, because I got Soundwave and stuff at the time. I think I said about that, but I think they were the first ones before that I got sealed, carded. And that was the first kind of post-childhood, like, okay, I'm going to get something that I never had as a kid. And I got the gold weapon versions, because of course there were silver and gold weapons versions of all of them. Got the gold weapon carded versions of those four toys, obviously in 2 cards. And it was tremendously exciting to just be like, wow, this is something that I never had as a kid. So,
did Steeljaw have silver weapon versions? I didn't know that.
I can't remember, actually. I remember there were gold weapons for some of them. So
I know there are painted detailed versions of Steeljaw,
right,
and even like slightly different color, like blue instead of, I think, the purpley color. But cassette variants are just something. I just have to hold my hands up and say that is a massive rabbit hole I've never really gone down.
But Ramhorn does have both, I think, gold and silver. I could be wrong.
Am I right in saying Ratbat was also?
Yes.
Needs to be considered like a movie toy, because
he's on the list. 100%. Yeah, he's a 1986 movie toy.
All the tapes that are in 86, aren't they? But I don't think Blaster and Soundwave were in the 86 assortment, are they?
No, I don't think they. Well, you know how it is, man. Like with G1 toys, you would still find 85 toys on the shelf in 86. I got my Starscream in 86.
Here you've got tapes specifically made for toys that aren't out at the same time.
Yeah.
His only real gimmick is they're compatible with something that's not available.
It's quite weird to think of now, isn't it? It kind of sounds a bit haphazard when you put it that way, really. Yeah. But somehow it worked. But no, I do. Ratbat definitely should be included in that. And I do think as well that was the point where cassettes, it just became like a thing, didn't it, for Transformers? Like obviously you'd already got, the Decepticons all from Microchange or whatever, but that was the point where I think interest was kind of like it really peaked on. And then obviously you've got the dinosaur ones the year after and whatever.
And Steve Slam.
Yeah, indeed. But I kind of feel like without the Autobot cassettes and Ratbat in 86, I think it wouldn't have been necessarily such a thing. I think they really kind of contributed to it. And still...
Yeah, look at them releasing cassettes in 87 and 88 for toys that
Right, that's what I mean. They're still doing it. It's mad, isn't it? And but I still remember every time I've watched the movie with people, that bit where Blaster ejects those 4 cassettes gets a cheer almost every time.
Yes, it's brilliant. I remember being thrilled in the cartoon in the theatre.
Yeah.
Like that.
And then they're neat little toys as well. I actually think the robot modes for Eject and Rewind are better than Rumble and Frenzy, personally.
They look great. I love Steeljaw. I think it's fantastic.
Right, well, we've been putting it off long enough, but it is now time to talk Decepticons. And of course, we were just talking about it there just briefly off camera. And of course, we all sort of said, oh, yeah, there's the 3 Decepticons to go. But it's actually 4, isn't it? Because there is a 4th member of that lineup, although probably not one that everybody thinks about. Maybe as a Decepticon. I don't know. Let's kick us off and talk about Cyclonus, Scourge, and Galvatron, of course, first of all. Because Maz, these were all toys that you had as a kid. Do you have Galvatron?
I did have them, yeah, which is extremely rare for me to have any set of anything as a kid. The Jets, I didn't even have them all, but I wanted them. But yeah, I had Galvatron, I had Cyclonus, and I had Target Master Scourge. Yeah, I think since Liam suggested doing the podcast, I have been looking forward to us talking about these toys. Yes. And I was so looking forward to us doing the 1986 range of Great Cybertronian write-off entries, because I was super looking forward to doing these ones.
Well, maybe we'll come back to it one day. I mean,
I should hope so.
Yeah, never say never. I think it's still on the cards that we would do that at some point, isn't it? So do you want to talk about these toys next episode then? Should we come back to it?
I could do a whole episode on them. I reckon I could easily do a whole episode on Cyclonus, Scourge, and Galvatron, because how different were their prototypes? Early Cyclonus prototypes had ears that moved, and he had fists that, slid out of his forearms. It was a really different looking proposition. But what we did end up getting, when my cousin got Cyclonus first, and I just coveted it for ages until eventually I just said to my mum, no, I just want it so much that I'm happy to have a toy that we already have in the house and give up an opportunity to have a new toy. And I really struggled to find Scourge as a kid. It was the Target Master that I found. But they totally lived up to what I wanted. And what a different look for toys, with like facial hair and that sort of super different aesthetic for robot heads. But I loved it.
Yeah, the beard was out there. That was like, I mean, obviously Wreck-Gar having a mustache and stuff is kind of its own thing. But the beard especially, I remember being like, that is different. That is like, that's not the Transformers that I kind of knew before, if you like.
Let alone the alt mode for Scourge, which is just a what?
Yeah, bar of soap.
Yeah, a shoe. Bathtub.
Yeah,
all of these things.
Yeah, that was one. I think it's fair to say that neither Cyclonus nor Scourge, forgive me, Maz, but neither of them look quite as dynamic as they do in the film necessarily.
Nothing has ever looked as dynamic as Cyclonus looks in the film.
It would be hard.
Ever come close?
It would be hard. But
no third-party version of it. Not even Kingdom Cyclonus can pull off everything right. But G1 Cyclonus's jet mode is the best version of that jet mode I've ever seen.
I was going to say the jet mode is legendary on that toy. It's really, really nice.
Perfect.
Slightly weird robot mode. Got to be honest.
Yeah, but loads of leg articulation and loads of arm articulation.
Right. There's several things about the robot mode that to this day just puzzle me. Number one is the flaps on the back of the thighs. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what is that about? Honestly, like, I still don't really get
about
it.
The engine wing thing?
Yeah, right. That's the other thing. All of that is just bizarre. The other one is the fact that the arms just will, purposely pop off.
Yeah.
For some sort of like weird attack mode or whatever. Why? It's just bizarre. And I think because of like the revelations around Magnus and kind of realizing that there was more to it as a kid, Cyclonus was one that I think I remember thinking, is there more to this as well?
And am I missing something?
Yeah.
Exactly how I felt about it.
Yeah.
So the arms pop off on purpose?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I had that toy as a kid and one of the arms came off and I never found it. And yeah, that was the end of that toy.
It was a terrible design choice in the end. It was a terrible decision for
I
toy.
thought it had broken. I didn't realise it was meant to do that.
Yeah, it's actually billed as a feature, isn't it? It's on the... I forget if it's on the box or not, but I've seen it listed as like an actual, like a thing that the toy does. the arms come off. But it's for the jet mode, to kind of streamline the jet mode. Is that fair to say, Maz? Is that your recollection?
I have to tell you, this is completely news to me.
All right. No, I've seen it.
I had no idea that the arms are advertised as coming off completely as a feature.
I'm sure.
You might be right.
I'm going to need to check, but because it's from memory, convinced that I've seen it somewhere, like a little blurb somewhere. Maybe it's not on the box, but I've seen it somewhere as like it's a feature that the toy does, that the arms come off, and it's like in its vehicle mode configuration, but without the arms, and that it's billed as being like it's got like another word to it, and essentially that, you know, it's kind of like a stealth or streamlined version of the jet or something.
That's mad. But I always found his arms so strange that he ended up with like giant paws, basically, giant hollow paws. And that was the weirdest thing about that toy for me. But yeah, I loved everything else about it. I just love the way it feels when you fold that massive nose cone back into place and it clicks into jet mode. I really love it.
Yeah, it is a nice one. It is a weird one overall, though. It's a very strange toy, but I do love it. I love the face sculpt on that toy.
Yes,
really love the face sculpt.
It's a very sinister robot mode. I loved the robot mode as a kid. It was so different, but wonderful.
Yeah, it's
really sinister and creepy.
Very creepy. The face is like nothing else.
So much.
The face has never really been done in animation, comics, anything. It's always looked like it does in the movie, but the toy is like its own thing, and I feel like he's as kind of ghoulish and nightmarish as Scourge in his own way. Whereas in the fiction, he's often painted as being like more of a normal looking Transformer, isn't he?
I think he's one of the most handsome looking Transformers they've ever drawn, and I don't think any toy has ever captured the face sculpt from the movie the right way. You know, when he lands next to Galvatron and they've just interrupted Starscream's coronation, that's one of the best looking Transformers robots I've ever seen. And no one has ever reproduced those dimensions on his face that handsomely before. And even Kingdom Cyclonus doesn't do it perfectly right.
No, absolutely. But that's one of those character designs that's, other than the face, it's so hard to replicate into a toy, isn't it? The way that slender body that he has and the very small torso. But yeah, the face, you are right. It's amazing that every time you see a toy of it, it's like it never quite hits it.
No.
Same with Cup. Cup's another one where no matter what they do, it never quite...
The face is very hard to do. I think because they were so specifically drawn, it's kind of what you were saying earlier, Liam, that the look and design of the film is just so unique, so idiosyncratic, that to recreate it in plastic form is I wouldn't say it's impossible at all. I think it can be done. But even Hot Rod, in a way, I would say it's the Hot Rod toys that actually look like the cartoon in the face. I'm struggling to think of one. You know, like I really love MP9.
That's what came to mind for me as well.
Yeah, even then, I would say it's not completely there. Like
no, it isn't.
It's that's maybe as close as it gets. But I'd say it's maybe 85% of the way there. But it's not straight. You know, like in the way that some toys, like I would say Ultra Magnus, the masterpiece for me, gets it.
Yeah.
That is just movie Magnus. I don't feel like we've had that with any of those other characters yet.
No, that's right. But I do think the Studio Series Scourge absolutely nailed the head sculpt.
That's fantastic,
But even G1 Scourge, I really love. And I know that the box art for G1 Scourge has a really super weird face.
Yeah.
But that comes from the prototype, because that's what the prototype looked like.
Yeah.
And the prototype's colors are different as well. It looks like the blue on his legs starts in a place where it just looks like he's wearing blue boots. And he almost looks like a cavalier in the way that he's shaped. But yeah, man, love Scourge. But Cyclonus, man, do you remember the UK version of that was in the Ladybird books and the UK 86 catalogue? Just all silver head.
Yeah.
I mean, that's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
I never had Scourge as a kid. It's one of those ones where ever I saw it, I was never that keen. Again, he's got that blur thing where he looks like he's squished in, and it didn't capture that same sort of flowing character that you get.
That's funny you say that. I actually find his proportioned better than a lot of other toys of the era, and he's got the really satisfying clicky elbows too.
Yes, I was just going to say, the
as an adult,
the arm movement's nice.
Completely the other way around now. I love it. But what I didn't experience, it's only till about 10 years ago was the first time I ever actually held one. But I just remember every time I saw a picture of it or something in the shop, I was never that. I was like, oh, it just doesn't look. It's just something about
It's a toy that handles better than it will ever look in photographs. I think.
Oh yeah.
It looks. It It can look really good in photographs, but it can also look
so.
really, really awkward in some photographs if people don't kind of, show it off to its best or whatever.
Yeah, if the head is pointing down, or it doesn't have the head ray. The head ray is so important to his look.
If you don't have the head ray, it looks terrible. It looks just like a flat top head. It's just really, really, really bad.
And it looks so bad, I don't even think they should ever have made it possible to remove it and hold it in his hand.
Yeah. It's a weird feature, like why it's so unnecessary. But I really like it, and I do like the transformation as well. I really like the way that the bits fold forward. The legs is a little bit of a challenge, getting the feet clipped in, but once it all goes together, it's very solid alt mode.
Yeah. There is a way of doing the legs on Scourge that does not scuff the shin stickers.
Right.
And it's the way it's outlined in the instructions. If you follow the instructions in the G1 manual to the letter, I mean angling it exactly how it is in those instructions, you do not scuff the shin stickers, and they always get scuffed on every transformed Scourge.
It's not.
You can avoid it.
It's not actually a great year for that, is it? 86. When you think
stickers.
Of it, stickers and that kind of stuff. Hot Rod as well with the thigh stickers that get just stripped off the second that you collapse the legs.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Scourge is a great example for it. Because
Scourge's sticker stock is awful.
Yes,
like especially on the blue on the tip,
the top ones.
It's the worst.
Yeah,
getting that nice is virtually impossible.
Yeah, it's very hard to not get it when it's kind of like slightly ripped at the edges, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's very, very difficult. But I'm very happy with my Target Master version.
I'm very happy with your Target Master version too.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
I've got its box. I'll get the rest one day.
You're going to sneak into my house one day, I think. I'll just wake up in the middle of the night and you'll be there rifling through the cupboard.
Sneak? No, let's knock on the door. I'm here for Scourge.
Give me the Scourge, yeah.
Do you think there were kids who bought multiple of those as sweeps at that time?
That's a good question.
There's bound to be one, isn't there? There's bound to be some kid. And Sharkticons too.
Yeah. Did we get Nor here?
No.
These one I do not remember at all.
No, these are one of those mad ones that were available in France, but not in the UK.
Nor I have just a bizarre toy for me. So strange. First experienced it last year, this year?
I think so. Yeah, you bought it for the GCW.
I did. Yeah. And do you know what? I love it. Love it. Absolutely love it.
It looks great.
It's
so pretty.
Mad toy. It's just so bizarre. Doesn't feel like a Transformer, really. In many ways, it still to me kind of stands out now. I think it's probably like if you'd never seen Wreck-Gar and you just saw it for the first time now, you'd be like, what? But I think if I'd have seen it as a kid, I would have thought it was strange. I guess because none of the other characters were done like Arbalest, Kranix, those guys, because you never got Unicron actually made. The fact that they did Nor and it stood out like that is a weird one.
Do you remember finding out about Nor? I don't know if you found out as a kid, but I found out in like 1998 that there was a Nor toy, and I was just, what?
Yeah. When I first looked at the internet, it was one of the first things I saw.
Yeah,
what?
Mind blown.
It's really bizarre, isn't it? Everything about it is weird. The color is amazing. The head sculpt is a very bulbous, big head. It's got super strange proportions. He kind of tapers towards the feet a little bit, but the top of the body is massive. He's got like this kind of hoodie thing, with the top of the head that kind of folds back. The only thing with it is that, again, it's terrible for paint wear. And
chrome wear.
Oh, man. I looked at like 1,000 copies of it, just trying to find one without paint wear on the top of the shark eyes. Yeah, the grey. And why is that bit painted? It's such a flaw.
Yeah,
it should just be bare plastic, honestly, because the other thing with it is that if you fold out the backpack properly, if he falls backwards, which he's very likely to do, that's the bit that hits the deck. So if it
must be it then. That must be what causes it.
Or if it leans against a wall, that's the bit that's leaning. It's the farthermost out bit of the backpack of the robot mode. So actually, in my display, because he has a propensity to topple, I actually have mine on display with that bit folded up slightly. So at least if he does go over, it's not the bit that's going to hit.
It's just got to be displayed in shark mode, hasn't it?
Yeah. It's probably a good one for it.
And the parts as well, it's so easy to find Nor without the tail.
Yeah.
It's just one of those that is always missing. Have you seen the prototype, resin Nor?
I don't think so.
It's so much more like the movie. And it doesn't transform. There's two versions. Raz has both of them, the shark mode one and the robot mode one. And you just got to check them out. It's just...
So why does it look more like the movie than the final thing then?
I think it's proportions. It's proportions and sculpting mainly.
Right.
That just put you much more in mind that you're not looking at the best representation that Hasbro could manage of the screen. It's the same with Blur. If you look at the prototype of Blur, his head sculpt is screen blur. And you just think, how did we end up with that? You know,
that's the bit that I can't fathom, was that they at some point had something that looked more like the screen, and then they moved away from it. And that's the bit I don't get.
I think it's because it was more parts
right
to make it look that way. It wasn't a solid part that just had the sculpt of the plastic face on it with the helmet. It was just more parts to the Blur head than you got with the final toy.
Maybe it's the same.
The noise one I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one to get for sure. Just because such a curio, such a weird thing.
I think it's iconic and it's a must-have for anyone who loves the movie. And I really, really, really want one.
Yeah. Now I find it's quite hard to ignore.
Nope.
You mean what? Like we're going to do to that joke?
But no, it's a toy I've never seen. But now I'm getting to that point in the list of things where I've never experienced. It's getting a lot smaller, and that's now moving to the top. Because all the new versions have been really nice. Like the Studio Series one,
we've been well
the Titans
served.
Return one was wonderful.
Exactly.
Little thing.
Just going back to Cyclonus and Scourge, do you guys have a preference for the stickered version versus the painted version of Scourge? Because you've got the solid blue plastic version on top. That was the first release, and then you get a stickered version, which is closer to the Target Master. Do you have a preference? Looks wise.
I can't say I do, I guess, because I've only got the Target Master. So
yeah, I can't remember which one I've got. I had to put stickers on the front, so maybe it's that one. Oh no, yeah, the top's different, isn't it? It's that bit. Mine's the first version. I think, is it painted metal?
No, it's just plastic. And I always found the blue-eared Cyclonus with the blue waist, it really makes a difference. It's so subtle and it doesn't come out in photographs, but in hand, it's a really big difference, and it's so much nicer.
How many Scourges and Cyclonuses have you got in your collection?
I have 3 Cyclonuses, the blue-eared one, regular one, and Target Master. Scourge, I have the blue top one, the plastic first release, stickered second release, and Target Master.
Okay, 3 of each.
And another stickered one on the way.
And do you still have a Scourge in box, or no? Has that moved on?
The 2 I mentioned.
Oh, they're the ones in the box. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think I have... No, it's weird. I have the blue one in box, the one I bought at the pub. Do you remember? Paul Hitchens brought it to the pub. That was so nice. And then I've got the stickered one sealed on the card, but no box.
Oh, God.
And Target Master is my childhood one, basically.
I miss buying Transformers in the pub.
Yeah. I miss that very much. It's being in a pub.
Yeah, remember that pub. So the final toy on the docket for tonight is one of the most classic, I would say. It's G1 Galvatron. Absolutely lovely thing. Did you both have it as a kid?
I did.
Liam?
This is where I'm going to probably top the Blur conversation here.
Oh, no.
This is a rare Transformer.
You can't be serious.
This is the rare Transformer I said no to because I disliked it that much as a child. Another kid at school had it, and when my dear old grandma there was going through a list of things of what to get, I took that off the Christmas list.
I'm not defending him this time.
I disliked it so much.
No,
I'm not.
I just...
it
didn't look like the Screen Galvatron, and Screen Galvatron was an amazing model. But
it's not even that. It was the tiny arms, the little miniature arms, and just everything.
Oh yeah,
looked
because
wrong.
everything else in G1 was perfectly proportioned, wasn't it? And arms were just always the right length.
But again, it goes back to the film, like the Galvatron you're shown compared to that toy, which looks, there's nothing similar other than it turns into a cannon. There's literally nothing. Like the head, the face is, God, it looks more like Nightbird than Galvatron. It's strange.
That's a good point.
It is a fair point. It doesn't look like the film. And even in purple, now that they've done the reissue version to Kara, all right, it's not the right purple, but even then it doesn't look like movie Galvatron.
But it's glorious.
It's still a blooming excellent toy.
To handle that toy was fantastic. Although I was really annoyed how quickly the gun trigger just died.
Did yours die? It wears off a bit over time, yeah.
Yeah, it just really quickly.
Can we just talk about that sound? Because...
Which one? They're all so great.
Or any of the in-betweeny sounds, when you kind of... It's just wonderful. That, to me, is childhood personified. If it just all of it. The one that you just did, the seal noise, is my favourite. It just absolutely kills me. Honestly, it takes me right back. There are very, very few things that are as viscerally nostalgic for me as the sound of that toy. I could just tell you what afternoon it was, where I was, in the garden, whatever, that sound. Or just my mum going, will you shut that thing up? Just because the sound of it used to drive her bonkers, honestly. Absolutely loved it.
I did get one a little bit later through a trade with, kids at school again, getting rid of toys and going through the churn. And I got that, and I just remember years later just hearing it, the noise going off at the bottom of a toy box in the hallway. That's what it was. Something had must have just been moved on its own and just kind of touched it, and that horrible noise, and my mum just yelling, "What is that?" Because you remember those key rings you used to have as kids that used to make loads of sounds and stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I always equate it to. It's like that noise.
There's something that hasn't popped into my mind for over 2 to 3 decades. Wow.
Well, that noise. Those key rings.
There's key rings, yeah. And there's little sound boxes you could get, which were basically the size of 3 iPhones now.
Yeah.
You just have 4 buttons and made 4 noises.
That's essentially what you've got on the back of G2 Ramjet. I know we talked about that before, but that is literally it. So, but yeah, no, Galvatron for me, I don't know. I know it's not the movie Galvatron. I still loved it, man, as a kid.
Ginormous toy.
Really, really big. I think it was like one of my biggest toys as a kid. I love the fact that it's, I presume, scaled to fit with Ultra Magnus. I guess that's why they made it the size that it is.
Well, it's always Ultra Magnus and Galvatron facing off in UK paperwork, isn't it?
Well, they were the leader toys of that year, weren't they? I mean, actually, funnily enough, say that with Rodimus.
The new leaders.
But Magnus, I think, was still kind of very much the leader figure, wasn't he? He was the one. Yes. He was the big kahuna.
City commander.
Yeah.
Whereas Rodimus was Autobot hero.
Yeah, right.
All right, hero. Nice track.
And actually, wasn't Galvatron City Commander or something as well?
It was.
Yeah.
They were opposite City Commanders, weren't they? So there you go. So it was clearly designed to fit with Magnus, and I just think it's a legendary toy. I think.
Yeah, we've been talking about these 1986 toys and the noises they make. Not just electronic noises, but the joint noises. Galvatron is a catalogue of unforgettable joint noises, isn't he?
Yeah.
Just rotating the shoulders with the squeaks.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The waist,
the click of the elbows for me was one as well.
Yeah.
The feel of collapsing the legs. Yes. And the flip of the feet, the solidity in the joints of the feet when they come out, I think it's beautiful.
Extending the chest.
Yeah.
The really quick ratchet of that.
Just the battery compartment and everything.
I would love to get the purple one now.
I
don't have a Galvatron anymore, but
I just can't recommend it enough. It's
so expensive
glorious.
Now, though.
Yeah, they've gone up.
But it's one of those that it's more expensive tomorrow than it was yesterday, and the longer you leave it, the more you'll pay. So if you want it, buy it yesterday.
That's true.
Yeah.
And it's worth every penny you're going to pay for it, even in today's prices.
Yeah, amazing artwork on the box as well. It's really cool.
It's really cool.
So it's so different for a G1 toy box to have something like that. Yeah.
And actually, Guido Guidi sold that artwork at Auto Assembly. I think it was 2005.
Oof. Have you got it in a folder? Is that
I wish I got it. I think Paul got to it first. Actually, I think Paul owns it. I think, if I'm not wrong.
It's amazing artwork. I would still love a vintage Galvatron though. That's one that I have. I have the reissues. I would love a vintage Galvatron.
I like that his head looks like a little castle. Rather than like the. At first, I didn't like it, but it's when the Lego bought out the castles, and for some reason I went for a castle phase for like a week, and so suddenly then it came into. I was like, I like it now.
He did briefly appear in that form in the comic. Can I say so? His actual first appearance in the comic. He looks like the toy, but it's very brief. And then
as he does in the Ladybird book.
Yeah, that's true. And then they revert to him looking more like the screen, but still grey.
The Marvel colours on the G1 cartoon looking Galvatron, with the Marvel colours,
the grey,
the toy colours. That's like my favourite looking Galvatron.
Yeah, it's really nice. I always loved that he was grey in the comic.
I think one thing that really does need to be said about Galvatron is how much out of scale he is with virtually everything he's supposed to. I mean, yes, you said he's in scale with Ultra Magnus, but Cyclonus and Scourge?
Yeah. Well, the scale generally with all of those 86 toys is just all over the shop, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, yeah.
I mean, again, look at Springer versus Galvatron. Yeah. Just as the ultimate sign of...
a blaster versus... I know he's not an 80. But no, it is really hard to sort of put them on a shelf and make them look coherent the way every Transformers toy line since has managed.
Yeah, I think so. It's a funny old thing, 86. It's a funny year of toys, I would say. And I think actually one thing that doing this episode tonight has sort of made clear for me is that it's not my favourite year of toys. There are some that I love, really love, like Hot Rod and Magnus and, many others. But there are some that I'm like, oh, that's a bit of a weird one, actually. Do you know what I mean? And it's not that I don't love them, but individually or whatever, but they have their quirks, I would say.
It's the let it be of G1.
Yeah.
For me. because I owned all the Beatles albums, but I never bought Let It Be. I kept reading the track list, kept thinking, I don't think there's anything there for me. All through my childhood, teenage years, borrowed it later on, and I thought it was really good. Now, after watching Get Back, the Peter Jackson documentary of the Beatles, I think it's an amazing album. And 1986 doesn't ever seem to be the year that people focus on to finish. There's the Diaclone era, Microchange era, then there's Headmasters and Target Masters afterwards, Rebirth era, and then there's Japanese exclusives. But 86 stands as an island. But you've just said, of all the weird variety in 86, and the examples you gave, we haven't even talked about the non-movie 86.
No, it's true.
It's a whole different ballgame there as well, to then be alongside these.
Yeah, and it is really a year of two halves, because all the other stuff is so different to this stuff that we've been talking about tonight. It's just bizarre.
You said it's nobody's favourite, but now going back, I realise it's the year that I'm missing the most from. And discovering them one by one is why I equated it to Let It Be. It's like this late discovery where there's still gems. I've still got Octane. I've still got Broadside. I know that's probably not going to fulfill it the same way.
Oh, I love Broadside.
I really look forward to it.
Yeah.
I've still got Springer to get again. I've still got the Predacons to get again. Nor. I've never owned Nor. I still got all those discoveries, and there's not a lot of years of G1 where I can say that.
Okay, well, I think that's going to about do it with 1986 movie toys. I've thoroughly enjoyed the discussion tonight. I think it's been kind of, if anything, I think going into this, I thought, okay, it's going to be relatively simple. And actually, I think we've uncovered a few nuggets along the way.
I thought it was going to be 2 hours of Hot Rod.
Yeah, I did.
With the other bits.
We've barely talked about Hot Rod, which is actually probably fair because we have talked about him on numerous other occasions. Also worth saying that we haven't touched on stuff like Unicron and RC, the unproduced 86 movie toys. It'd be lovely to talk about them as well. I think realistically, there's an element of capping the subject when it's done, and we'll, I'm sure, come back and do a segment on unproduced toys generally at some point, or those ones, and we'll focus in maybe a mini-sode or maybe a proper episode. I don't know. We'll have to see a little ways down the line. You can let us know on social media maybe what you fancy. With that in mind, also worth mentioning our sponsor, TFSource.com. So thank you very much again to them. Do check them out, TFSource.com, for all your Transformers and third-party needs. And our Patreon again, which you can find at patreon.com/triple takeover, where you might be listening to that already and getting early access as we speak, which will be exciting. But if you don't, there are 4 glorious tiers of mini-sodes and all kinds, so do check that out. And Maz, do we have any thank yous to say on that score?
We have so many thank yous now that I actually have a scroll bar during this section. So one of the perks of being a Sixo's butler is that you get a thank you on the show. So if you would all prepare yourselves for the longest list we've had yet.
Here we go.
We'll say a big thank you to Nick, Dean Watts, Danny Roberts, Chris C137, Andy, Cannon, Preston, Brian Fox, Chris, Billy Ho, Spiderfather, Adam Shoemaker, Zachary Blader, Matt, Stephen Perkins, Bad Saturday, Justin Masaru, Dave Dalrymple, Snowcrack, Absurd, Geo Kaiser, Yusufa, John Pearl, Cliff Saris, Loxer, Troy Seth, Anthony Karch, Alec Meir, Captain R.A., Phil G., Riley Lentz, Jonathan False Logic Howard, Jacques Pelletier, Alicia, a.k.a. Leishatron, and Sam Highland.
Way.
What a list.
What a list. What a list.
Thank you, Sixo's butlers. Thank you very much for the support. We very much hope you are enjoying your exclusive content.
Yeah, particularly those Christmas one and the extra one we did there. And fair to say, we've said it before, but worth repeating that it really does help us to keep going. All of that, that support is,
And that's not just the butlers; it's every tier,
yes.
Even the £1 a month apologetic ramps, because they don't really get a perk beyond being able to say that they support us and, like you say, keep the lights on.
Yeah, just literally
have our eternal gratitude.
Yeah, just literally £1 a month, innit? And it does. It all helps. It's amazing for us, the support. We've really appreciated it. So, also worth mentioning our social accounts. So you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And that's what is it now? It's Facebook
is at Triple Takeover, like Patreon, and Twitter and Instagram are _takeover.
Yeah, there we go. Fantastic. And where can our followers find you, lads? Liam?
I am Toybox Soapbox on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Maz?
I am At TFsquareone on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And I am at Sixo TF on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. So that's it. Otherwise, we're all done. So let this mark the end of the Triple Takeover episode on the 1986 movie toys, as we've looked back on an age of rubber tires and die-cast construction, till all are one.
My other tube just dried up completely, and I used it regularly. I think it's a bit unwieldy. I don't think the balance is there.